Okay, good morning members and welcome to the February 2024 Skye and Raasay Area Committee. Alistair, are there any apologies for absence?
There are none, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to declarations of interest and transparency statements, I think it's appropriate to pause for a moment of reflection. As suddenly and unexpectedly, a regular attender at our committee, Julie Wildman, Assistant Ward Manager, passed away on the 26th of January. Julie was a hard-working and valued member of staff in the ward management team, and she worked across the west and mid area of Highland, supporting the work of elected members in Wards 5, 8, 9, and here in Ward 10. She also offered many to community councils and community groups invaluable support. Julie carried out all her duties with enthusiasm and good humour and will be very sadly missed by her colleagues and elected members. At this very difficult time, our thoughts are very much with her friends and family, and in particular her daughter Molly, of whom she was so immensely proud. Before I ask for declarations of interest and transparency statements, I would like to make a few comments in relation to item 14, where members are discussing and making decisions around community regeneration funding applications. The points I would like to clarify are that each application is to be considered on its own merits, taking account purely of the relevant criteria involved with that application. If members have a conflict of interest in any application, these applications will be considered and determined first, with the member involved leaving the meeting until any such applications are dealt with. Also, members are reminded that they may need to reconsider their situation with regard to other awards and potentially declare an interest in the consideration and determination of subsequent applications if any ward they have declared an interest in needed to be reassessed if there were insufficient funds left in the pot. So with that in mind, members, I will now ask if there are any declarations of interest or transparency statements to make, taking account of all agenda items before us today. Over to you, Alistair.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've just received a couple from Councillor Callum Monroe in respect of item 5, the education reports. He's made a transparency statement. As a close family member, as a teacher employed by the Highland Council, and he also has children who attend schools in the associated school group. And in relation to item 14, Community Regeneration Fund, Councillor Monroe has declared an interest in the application relating to Skye Connect. He is a director of Skye Connect and feels that he has a conflict of interest in this particular application. So he will not take part in the consideration of this application and will leave the meeting when it's being considered. That's all I have at the moment.
Okay,
Chair.
Thank you, Alistair. So when we come to item 14, we will take the Skye Connect application first. Finally, members, before we move on to agenda item 4, can I also update you about agenda item number 12? We were due to get a presentation about the Portree demonstrator project, but in discussion with officers, it has been agreed to postpone this presentation until our next area committee, when a more comprehensive summary will be able to be provided. However, I can report that a contractor and external design team have been engaged to work alongside the Council's project team to review options and develop the master plan, and a range of options are currently being considered, with the scope and estimated cost of each currently being finalised. Once this exercise has been completed, a full update will be provided to the next area committee. Okay, members, thank you for that. We turn to the agenda and we start off with agenda item 4, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Local Committee Performance Report. And I'm delighted to welcome Carla Stevenson to introduce the report, and then we'll go to questions.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. So the report covers from the 1st of October to the 31st of December 2023. And I'm pleased to note that it has actually been quite a quiet quarter for us in terms of operational incidents. We attended a total of 35 incidents, 3 of which were accidental dwelling fires, though fortunately nothing serious. Even better news, we've had no casualties at all, whether it's road traffic collisions, of which we attended 2, and our unwanted fire alarm signals is dropped down to 7 from 15 the previous year. We've had no deliberate fires this quarter either, which again is really promising good news. So then just in terms of the unwanted fire alarm signals, it's what we call UFAS. Like I say, it has decreased because from the 1st of July last year, we stopped attending automatic fire alarm call-outs to commercial business and workplace premises, such as factories, offices, shops, leisure facilities, unless a fire has been confirmed. Our control room operators are now asking anyone who reports a fire alarm to check whether there is actual signs of fire, and there is a criteria such as, you know, our multiple alarms actuating, for example, before we send an appliance. However, just to clarify, this does not apply to sleeping premises, which is hospitals, care homes, hotels, or any domestic dwellings, as they will always receive our full predetermined attendance. And this change has come about following our public consultation in 2021. In terms of our availability, it's much the same, to be honest, as it has been the other quarters. The figures in the report do not include joint mobilising availability. We do have Dunvegan and Portree as kind of partners in the joint mobilising pilot. However, if there's scope to involve other stations at the time of call, we do so, and in the last quarter we did mobilise Dunvegan and Uig together because they had the right number of personnel with the right number of skills, and again they achieved a quicker response time than the next nearest. So joint mobilising is working well. My thanks also to the crews that cover other stations other than their home station. So for example, we have a number of staff and Uig personnel who work in and around Portree, and their employers are fantastic in allowing them to attend Portree during daytime hours to cover there. Equally, we have Broadford personnel who cover Kyle due to their work locations, and again my thanks go to their employers for allowing them to maintain operational availability. So whilst our figures might not look you know, great in terms of daytime, we do make the most of the personnel we have and when we have them, and like I say, that we can only do this with the support of local employers, and hopefully with the reduction in UFAS this reduces unnecessary disruption to primary employment, so when the pagers do activate, they know it is for a genuine cause. I'm happy to take any questions on the report as well, if you have any.
Okay, Carla, thank you very much for that. Before I go to other members, again, I suppose my concern is still round about the availability figures, and I do know that you have been conducting quite a lot of community engagement, and in fact, I think I've got an event I'm attending with you in the near future in Broadford, round about females being involved in the service. But it's really, I suppose, that question round about the availability, and are there any ways that we can continue to try and look at improving recruitment? What we'll do, Cara, is I'll go around all the members, so you've got my question, then you can come back and answer them all in one go if that's helpful.
Of course, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Monroe.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Carla. Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning, members too. Carla, thank you for that. I mean, a good report and nice and succinct too, which is what we want. I mean, no casualties. That's impressive. All the figures seem to be below average. Seems to be that you know the safety message you're putting out is getting to our communities. The question I have, I suppose, is around the Uig station and its future relocation. Just appreciate an update on that, and just to hear how that's going.
Certainly.
And Councillor Miller.
Thanks very much, Chair. Hi, Carla. Just morning. I welcome your update on the joint mobilising availability. That seems to be working well, which obviously helps to keep the stations online. So that's good news. And if there's anything else you want to add to that, that would be great. I noticed, of course, that you only had a couple of road accidents, but I'm sure, as members, we all know there are lots of road accidents in the last while that, of course, you probably don't get called to because of the there's no need for you to be there, but it's still very welcome. Can I ask you just a question, really, that's not in the report, but if you're able to give us any update on the situation regarding the location of the Portree fire crew, because obviously we all know for many years now that the fire service have been looking to move from their existing one because of its very difficult location, especially for the engines getting called out in emergency down the Stormy Hill, which is not really ideal nowadays, and the other streets round about are quite congested. So I just wonder if you have any update on any plans to move to a more suitable location, given the fact as well as we hope that the link road over the home farm to the A855 will be constructed fairly soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Carla.
Yep, certainly. So I'll kick off with recruitment. So recruitment actually has been quite positive, particularly over the last year. I'm sure you've seen various social media activities we've been doing, and that's actually had a very good knock-on effect, as well as our community engagements significantly improved now as well, in terms of just being able to get out and about again in the community. We've done 29 home fire safety visits in the last quarter alone, which is fantastic for the crews, and we've been doing things like school visits, leaflet drops. We've got our second fire skills course next month. We've already had one success from the first ever fire skills course. One young lad who attended that as a pupil at Portree High School has now reached the age of 18, and he is now next week going to start his initial training course, having passed the recruitment process. So it's fantastic to see the youth of the island getting involved with us, and then going on to actually submit an application and going through it. It's wonderful to see. So yeah, so recruitment, like I say, we're trying to be as dynamic as possible. So joint mobilising, like I say, we've got our set kind of pilot areas, but again, we'll always look at what options we have. So the crews now are very, very much aware that we mobilise people, not just appliances, which again is improving morale and their kind of engagement as well, because even if their own station might be short, they know that they can still get called out if required, which is a great boost, because ultimately that's why they join, isn't it, to serve their community. So that's helping as well. And again, a knock-on effect is words getting out in the community. And again, it's great to see. It really is. So again, the reducing the impact on primary employers. So we are engaging with local employers as well, to help them see the benefits. There's a lot of transferable skills that our firefighters can gain. We now have several 18 across Highland West, West Ross, Kyle and Skye, that are now trained to what we call ICAT, as our Initial Casualty and Treatment Intermediate course. So they can now train personnel in their station, their ICAT operators course, which reduces travel to Inverness for a course. So we're trying to do more things locally again, which helps make it more attractive. They're having to go away less for courses where possible. So yeah, so we're picking up. It's ongoing work. We'll never rest on our laurels with it, but we'll always do what we can. In terms of UG Station, so the latest information I have is the funding's been approved for the next year's capital budget, and we're looking at getting a modular build at UG as part of the redevelopment of the area. So it's like very exciting news, because this will be the first of its kind in Scotland, and again, it'll give opportunity if any partner agencies wish to join us there. But for me, the health and well-being of our staff will be significantly improved at that station as well, in terms of the facilities. When they come back from an incident, they'll be able to come in, remove their dirty fire gear, have shower facilities and everything, which is absolutely wonderful. So again, hopefully the positive impact will have a knock-on impact on our recruitment process too. With Portree Station, I don't have any any news in terms of capital funding being allocated for this next year, but I will come back to you, Councillor Miller, on that. But I know from recent dialogue I've had with our property teams that they are very much still working with Highland Council to identify suitable premises. We are very much still in negotiation with partner agencies as well, because we would love to have a multiple agency building. We're looking also as well, making sure it's not a single point of failure. So if we do come together and we're building our business continuity plans are such that, business won't be affected. But I do agree in terms of the location of Portree station, how busy Portree can be. So again, with the Link Road area, we are looking out that kind of road, kind of the recycling area, the Highland Council depot out by Jan's, that kind of area, for kind of almost future-proofing it as far as we can. But I haven't got any more than that, unfortunately, Councillor, but I will come back to you when I get something. RTCs, you mentioned that, like, thankfully, yes, there have been very few numbers, most really kind of weather related, as you would expect at this time of year. Even in the past month or so, we've had a kind of wide range of weather. So again, we're using our social media channels where we can, working with partners and trying to raise awareness of not only the weather warnings, but safe guidance and how people can keep themselves safe to avoid us from having to be called out in the first place. Any further questions from you, councillors? I hope that's answered your questions.
No, Carla, I think that you've answered them very comprehensively. And once again, can I thank you for coming to committee, and again for the brevity of the report, but it still had all the information that we needed. So we look forward to similar reports in the future. And as you know, you can contact members, and I'm sure members will contact you if they want to discuss any items further.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Carla. Members, before we move on, can I go back to agenda item 3, the minutes of the last meeting of the committee. They're there for noting, as they've already been agreed at Highland Council. So I forgot to do that. So are we happy with that, members? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5. I'm delighted to welcome Mary MacDonald, the Area Education Manager for the West. So the first report that you want to speak to us about, Mary, is the school inspection report at Portree Primary School. And again, thank you for your report that highlights the areas of strength and the areas for improvement, but also gives us a summary of what the QIs actually mean. So thank you for that. So over to you, Mary. You're on mute, Mary.
Sorry, Chair. There we go. Yes, Portree Primary had their visit from Education Scotland in October 23. And again, the inspection focused on the 4 quality indicators that you will have seen in previous inspection reports. So the school was graded good for leadership of change, good for learning, teaching and assessment, good for wellbeing, equality and inclusion, and satisfactory for the attainment and achievement. So clearly, moving forward, the school, excuse me, is going to be focusing on the attainment. But I have to say the inspectors were pleased with what the school currently has in place in terms of the raising attainment agenda. There's been attainment meetings been introduced in the working time agreement calendar for this session. Teachers are looking more closely at assessment information to better inform the teacher judgments in attainment, and the teachers are engaging well in moderation activity. So as a result, the inspectors were very happy that this should lead to more reliable information being gathered in time, and noted that the leadership team are at an early stage of trialling a new tracking system, and that once embedded, these approaches, the inspectors were confident will increase the robustness of the children's attainment and leading to evaluations of attainment over time becoming more effective. So that was actually, something that the school can very much had started to focus on and will continue to focus on in the future. In terms of the pupils' achievement, the inspectors noted that there was an extensive range provided by the school for their pupils in both sporting and creative activities. They noted the Skye dance, Radio Skye, a running club, a school allotment, badminton, hockey and football. So that children have many opportunities and for achievement, which we're also improving. And they noted that these are building on children's confidence and resilience and developing their skills such as teamwork and cooperation. So again, what the inspectors would now like to see at the school is that the leadership team develops a more robust system just to record the children's wider achievements. So while they noted that was happening, it was that gathering of evidence that they were hoping to see an improvement in, and also to identify more accurately those who might not be accessing the wider achievements available at the school. So I think it was a positive experience for everybody at the school. I think they felt the inspectors were very fair. The inspectors certainly thanked the staff and the leadership team for the way that they all engaged with the inspection process that week. And I think that the school feel that the report is a very fair reflection on where it is and gives them that focus for moving forward. So I don't know if there's any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. I noticed when you listed the activities, you didn't mention Shinty there. I'm sure that was an omission on your part, rather than an omission on the school's part.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but certainly in terms of, I mean, the whole agenda round about the assessment and moderation, that's one that we are trying to move forward. And there's a paper coming Education Committee this month that will articulate improvements and more robustness and more consistency in terms of assessment and moderation across the piece. So thanks for that. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mary, for that report. It was really reassuring to hear your comments. Just a couple of points I'd like to pick up on from the report. The first thing was reading it in section 1, it references Kilmuir School. I'm wondering, is that just a clerical error, or could you talk more about why the Kilmuir School is referenced there? And the other thing is in section 4.2 of the next paper, 5B. Which goes on to talk about the inspection reports for all of the schools. I note that Portree schools referenced as good in all of those, yet in this report, and in your comments you say it's satisfactory. So I'm just wondering, what is the most up-to-date one? Moved it from satisfactory to good, or has it been taken from good to satisfactory? Like, it's just for the direction of travel. It'd be helpful if you could provide some clarity in that. But your comments are reassuring that things are progressing well. Thank you.
Okay, before we go back to Mary Rudy, when we come, we'll deal with the item 5B, but that was the standards and evaluations, I think, gradings as opposed to the inspected grades. But Mary will clarify that. And I think was it a clerical error, Mary, in terms of Kilmuir instead of Portree?
Absolutely, so apologies for that. Well spotted. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mary, and can you pass on our thanks and congratulations to the staff at the school on that report. Okay, so we're moving on now to agenda item 5B, which is really round about the whole Portree Associate School Group. So that's an overview of all our schools, and Councillor Stewart has highlighted an important point there round about the standards and quality reports. And I suppose I still kind of keep my finger on the pulse to a degree, so I'm not going to steal your thunder. So effectively, Rudy, as part of the standards and quality report, schools are asked as part of their self-evaluation processes to grade where they are in terms of the QIs. And then obviously when an inspection happens, one would hope that the evaluations that are made gel with what the inspectors say. And if they don't, obviously that's a point of action. But I'll hand over to you generally, Mary, in terms of the fuller report. And I think other members might have some concerns around about maybe numbers, the roles in schools, which we haven't got control over, but you might want to comment on that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yes, I think it's possibly been a while since we presented these very full reports on our ASGs to committee. The standards and quality reports, Councillor Stewart, at the end of each session, each school is required to submit to the authority a school improvement plan and a standards and quality report where the school itself is evaluating itself against the quality indicators and how good is our school. So that's where that's the reason for the difference there. That was the school's own evaluation as opposed to Education Scotland's evaluation. And in terms of it's the same for the ELC settings. Again, that's the school's evaluations about where they see their quality indicators in terms of the early years. Could I just say, in the early learning centre for Knockbreck Primary School, currently there isn't actually a nursery at Knockbreck Primary. And then in terms of Education Scotland inspection reports, Dunvegan Primary was actually inspected at the beginning of December. However, we haven't received the final report from Education Scotland, but I would expect we'll be in a position to bring that to your next area committee. And staffing, it seemed very recently, but it was actually inspected in 2018. So while we can probably expect at least one other school within Portree SG to have a visit from Education Scotland this session, it shouldn't be staffing, as it was fairly recently inspected. And then we go on to the school roles. So if we look at the primary, that's the current session. And then we're looking at the attendance, absence and exclusions, where I'm very pleased to see that there's 0 exclusions for our primary schools within the ASG. And for the high school, again, the exclusion rate is below both Highland and the national average, which is good to see. The attainment profile is always difficult for our schools within Portree SG due to the numbers of children, because it may be a case of we have 1 primary 4 in a school, which would make them very easily identifiable. So that's why, unfortunately, we only have Broadford and the 2 Portree schools within the report here. But I'm sure if members wish to discuss anything further with the head teachers, they would be very happy to come along to perhaps one of the business meetings if there was anything you wanted to discuss with them in terms of their attainment. Moving on, it gives us a bit more specifics just for 21-22 and 20-21. And I think from looking at the figures, we can perhaps see the impact of COVID in the 2021 when we particularly look at the Broadford attainment figures there. For the 21-22, it was extremely low. And then we see that improvement for 22-23 in Broadford. And I feel, again, perhaps teachers were just a wee bit reluctant and unsure about where the children were in terms of attainment, with them having not been in school. But we can see that improvement there for Broadford in particular. The secondary attainment, I think Portree, when we look at the virtual comparator schools, is doing well in terms of the literacy, perhaps not so much in numeracy, so that's perhaps an area we'd be wanting them to be focusing on currently. And then for our senior phase for our schools, we have what's known as the average total tariff score for leavers. And we look at our lowest, middle and highest. And again, I think when we look at our virtual comparator schools, Portree High is doing well. And I think in particular for the 16 plus pupil destinations for Portree High, again, we can see that it is above the national and the Highland percentages for the positive destinations. I don't know if there's any questions on the destination of pupils before we move on to the school roles, which I'm sure is the area that members will have been looking very closely at. So before we look at the school roles, I don't know, Chair, if any member has any questions or would like any of our head teachers to come along to any of the business meetings, which I'm sure they'd be happy to do.
Okay, thanks, Mary. I appreciate that. I mean, a question I've got round about, I suppose, positive destinations and destinations generally, and including what we're able to offer in terms of modern apprenticeships, is that here in Skye, we clearly have tourism at the heart of our economy. And it's really, we hear all the time about hotels and hospitality businesses really struggling to recruit staff, and especially young people. And a conversation I had probably over a year ago with the staff at West Highland College was, despite the fact that they were putting on a hospitality course, the take-up from our youngsters wasn't particularly high. So it's really thinking about how can we move that agenda forward, because I think everyone appreciates now that a career in hospitality can be very rewarding, and also there are opportunities in hospitality to further a career on the island and actually have quite a successful career. So it's really just that conversation round about, are we doing anything to see it in terms of collaboration with the business on the island? And that might be something the high school senior management team would answer. And are you aware of the fact that there are such issues with recruiting young people for seasonal work and hospitality work?
Absolutely. I was delighted to read just last week that one of the S4 pupils at Portree High has won the Young Chef of the Year as part in collaboration with UHI. And I think he's been working with Edinburgh Lodge. So I think it's just exactly what you were saying, Chair, that it's that collaboration between school, college and a local employer, which has seen great success for that pupil at the high school. And I'm hoping to meet with the head teacher of the high school just to see how that came about and to see how it can be replicated with perhaps other employers across the island.
Okay, thank you for that. And can I also maybe congratulate Donny Angie, because he was an ex-pupil of mine and I was delighted, as was Callum Montgomery, by the way. So I'm delighted to see Callum and Donny Angie doing so well. Okay, we'll now go to Councillor Stewart and then Councillor Miller, who's nodding his head vigorously there. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to pick up on some of the metrics in section 7 here. The virtual comparators used to benchmark against a number of these indicators, but elsewhere in the same sort of section it uses the national average. I think it'd be really helpful to have, you know, maybe both provided in future reports, just to get a better picture and understanding of where it is, because, you know, the pupils that we have here in Skye, you know, they're not competing against the national average, or they are competing against the national average. It's not the virtual comparator when it comes to attainment at university places. And the other point, going on to positive destinations, is actually the tariff points. I'm a bit concerned, you know, the most advantaged children are getting, I think it's 2,088 tariff points on average, whereas on the opposite side of the scale, you know, we've got 201. Now, when I was at university, I was part of the widening participation programme, and what happened there was a group of students would go into local schools and deliver STEM workshops, and, you know, I saw firsthand that, you know, the financial advantages or disadvantages that some people face, you know, isn't a barrier to their intelligence. I would just like to know what sort of work is being put in place, or is there anything being done to look at how we can, you know, narrow that gap, because, you know, from 201 to 2,088 is quite a stark difference, and I would hope to see that there's work being done to narrow that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Stewart. I'll go to Councillor Miller and then Mary can come back.
I think there should be a ban on trumpets at these meetings. The use of trumpet. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I just, because the chair's comments about obviously tourism is quite a big situation, employer on Skye, I suppose. But I just wonder what work has been done with the school and the UHI with trying to encourage people into social care as a career, because that's something that is pretty crucial to this part of the world, and we see that there's a huge gap in provision, whereas probably I think 15 years ago we were probably being held up as the place, the leading area for providing care at home, etc., etc. Nowadays we seem to have slipped all the way down. So what's been done to encourage young people to perhaps look at that as a career? And I just wanted to say as well, going back to the previous report, I think I would like to associate myself with the chair's comments about the report at the Portree Primary School. I think it was a very good report, and we should encourage the staff to continue the good work. So that's basically my question, Chair.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Miller. And I think you make a very valid point there about the challenges being faced by the health and social care sector. And I suppose when you're going into a health and social care career and you're getting £12 an hour, whatever it is, and you can work in a chip van here and down in the south end of Skye and get £15 an hour. I suppose there are challenges there that that are societal as opposed to things we can do locally. But I think it is important to try and understand what we're doing in terms of encouraging our young people to go into that very rewarding career. Councillor Monroe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, huge societal questions here. No, I think just a point about the positive destinations, and I've just become involved in a initiative called My Future, My Success. Highland are doing that, and we've got a very good officer in Portree High School. I've just begun on a programme with a pupil, and I really think that's looking forward to getting into that relationship and helping that pupil achieve his goals for when he leaves school. So I think these things are, so it's a jigsaw. Several strands will have to be pulled together to reach positive destinations for our pupils. But that's certainly one thing I'd like to acknowledge, and the work of the staff in Portree High School. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Monroe, if you're looking for advice about My Future, My Success, Councillor Miller is also involved in the scheme, and I'm sure he'd be able to pass on his extensive knowledge. So, and it might be that at a future meeting, Mary, we might get Maxine from the council along to discuss that programme, My Future, My Success. Yes,
that would be welcome, and she would welcome the opportunity to come in and speak to members generally about the work that's been a very successful programme, I would say, for the authority. And I look forward to hearing how their new officer settles into Portree. I believe they work with Ploughton High School as well. And I know that we've directed a couple of pupils that I'm aware of at Ploughton to My Future, My Success, to encourage them to get on the right path. I say not every young person needs or wants to follow the same path to achieve that positive destination, and it's about us all working together to enable them to achieve what's the right path for them. I know just last week I was in a meeting with our new chief executive, and these very issues about the hospitality sector and health and social care were also being discussed. And it's the challenges that are being faced, I think, across the country, not just here on Skye. But I think what I would like to do, members, is again be in contact with our head teacher, Tony Breen, and the deputies here at the high school, and looking to see how we can encourage folk across genders as well, because I think some, especially in social care, can tend to be thought of as something that the females will be more attracted to, and we need to ensure that that's not the case, and that everyone is being encouraged to look at the opportunities that is available there. So I would be very happy to come back to the next meeting and say, and perhaps even bring the head teacher along to a business meeting or the next area committee meeting to discuss these very issues with you all.
Okay, Mary, I think that's an offer that we will be taking you up on, and I'm sure Willie will be in touch.
Yep, and I know with STEM, I had pupils from Portree High when I was head teacher at Carvers and Struan, Councillor Stewart. We had pupils from Portree High School coming out to deliver STEM, and I know that the pupils at my primary schools and the secondary pupils seem to get a lot out of that, and it was run out very successfully from here at the high school. So I'm not sure if that's up and running again, but again, that's something I can find out about that engagement, using our pupils from the secondary schools to be working with them and encouraging our primary pupils. Thank you.
Okay, Mary, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so can I thank you very much again for bringing these two reports. And I think it is important that we do have you coming along to area committees. But Councillor Miller has put his hand up one more time.
Sorry, Chairman, maybe I missed. I thought you were going to go back to talk about the school roles.
Yes.
I know that we can't.
Okay, my apologies. Yep. Okay.
But it would just be interesting to hear Mary's take on the situation, and I know that we can't do much about it, but looking at some of the roles, it does give us some concern. And I just wondered, based that the school roll predictions, if I recall correctly, are based on perhaps housing being made available in areas, or the lack of housing, the lack of land available to build affordable housing on. I just wondered if there's some sort of I don't know, some sort of collaboration between the councils, housing people, the housing association, and education, just to see if what can be done, because I think there are some roles on there that would give us huge concerns going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rowe, are you wanting to come back in?
Sorry, Chair, we're just talking school rules at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just what I was thinking and over the weekend was, I mean, we had this paper about depopulation at Highland Council in December, so there's nothing really surprising here, but I think it's a line in the sand. It's something we have to see as a warning, and we have to actually to think about how we deal with falling rolls in some of our schools. And I think the point I made at Highland Council was it's local solutions, it's communities which need the investment of effort and in money and in housing and all these things to thrive. So yeah, it's a warning, it's a line in the sand, and we have to go and make sure we keep these schools going.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Councillor Monroe. Yeah, and I think what's important to realise here is, and I think as Councillor Miller articulated, the importance of land banking here. We can't build houses unless we've got land. It's not to say that there's not a lot of house building going on, because we've got house building in Killakin, we've had Slate, we've got Broadford, we've got Portree, we've got Raasay. We're hoping we'll have house building in Portree as part of the new school site, that although the school's not happening just now, hopefully we'll be able to move ahead with the housing, which will hopefully be a catalyst for getting the school done. But categorically, there's more needs done, and we need to be looking at what the real challenges are. Councillor Stewart?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I think what Councillor Miller was saying was a very good point. We've got to sort of almost work not in silos as a council, but look at what cross-service working can be done to try and address some of these issues, because looking at young families moving into some of these communities, it's going to be very difficult if the school's under threat of closure. Indeed, once the school does close, because people looking to return back to where they're from, or moving into the area, one of the main things that people look at is the school, because that's the real heart of the community. And once that's gone, then it's going to really accelerate the rate of depopulation. I think that's my concern. But I fully agree with Councillor Miller there. We've got to look at what sort of cross-service working can be done and come out of the silage. Education and housing should be working together, not just for this, but to see about how we can encourage people to maybe work in some of these more remote schools as well. And I do think housing is a key factor to it, just as much as the education.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very valid point there, Councillor Stewart. Recruitment in rural areas in terms of a school post, whether it be teaching or otherwise, can be challenging. And in fact, it's challenging at this time. Mary, anything you want to add to the comments from members?
No, I think you've all made the points very clear. I'm in consultation quite frequently with my colleague Ian Jackson, who looks at the school mothballing and closure process, and obviously it's quite a complicated consultation process that some members will have been through before for some of our Skye schools. But Ian is looking at schools across Highland as well. It's not just our area in particular that's seeing these falling rolls. It's something we're very conscious of, and want to do our best also to support those local communities who may see their school at threat due to low numbers. But I say it's quite a complicated process that the council would have to go through, Councillor Stewart, if it does decide that any school has to unfortunately be closed.
Okay, members, that's fine. Okay, Mary, so once again, thank you very much. And I'm sure we will take you up on the offer to come to an area business meeting and a return visit to area committee. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Bye for now.
All right. Okay, members, we're moving on to agenda item 6, the Area Road Capital Programme. And I'd like to welcome Mackenzie Sutherland, who we all call Mac, to his first area committee in his new role as a interim roads operational manager. So welcome, Mac. And before I hand over to Mac, can I also thank Gordon MacDonald, who was our previous ROM, for his work and his contributions, certainly over the time I've been a member and long before that. And we wish Gordon well. He hasn't left the council, he's just got a different role within the roads team. So over to you, Mac.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. I'd like to thank Gordon as well for passing the baton over to me. So today we are I'm giving you the Area Roads Capital Programme for 24-25. The report details the proposed area programme for the Isle of Skye and Raasay. Members will be asked to approve the proposed prioritised area capital programme just a little bit later on. So I think I would draw attention to a couple of sort of 4.3, recognising that the capital programme also will include a combination of other works to prepare the roads. And notwithstanding this, the programme that we're giving you, it's understood the variations can be expected with this. As we go through the year, priorities can change, roads can deteriorate faster, so we can look at that and agree with members at ward business meetings or equivalent monthly specific roads meetings, however it suits, to maintain that dynamic programme. The budget allocation, as members will know, it's not actually been set for 24-25, so we assume using the previous year's allocation to come up with this. And there will be in Appendix 2, there's a slight mistake in actual fact. In somewhere it mentions that there's above and below a red line. There's not actually a red line in it, but when you're going through the programme, you'll see that there's in bold a figure, and that would be what the previous year's budget would be, and everything below that we could bring into play if there's additional funds allocated. So as it stands just now, using that calculation, the baseline capital budget would be overlay £296,000, and for surface dressing £220,000. And the schemes were selected for inclusions in this programme on the basis of need. And this is, members will be aware of this, we use a combination of the SCRIMS survey, the Scottish Road Maintenance Condition Survey, local safety inspections, service inspections, etc., and input from local members. So members have Appendix 2 in the papers. I would invite any questions and ask you to approve. The reason why we look for approval at an early stage is because we need to plan the works, we need to book possession of the roads, we need to book materials, plant and stuff like that. So that's why it comes to you early. Members.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. I'll go down, members, if I'll come in maybe first. I think as you articulate, the budget hasn't actually been set, and I suppose it should be recognised that we did get additionality here on Skye and Raasay last year, but we have had really difficult weather conditions, and I know there's nothing could really be done over the last couple of months, while the roads team were probably on gritting duties, but the weather wasn't right for it. So it's just to make sure that the additionality we did get last financial year, that money is going to be committed, and we'll get all the works done round about that. I think it's actually quite sobering, although we don't know the budget, to actually look at the allocation we get, just over £500,000, when our previous ROM had indicated that he reckoned it would be 26 million, even to get the roads in Skye up to a reasonable standard. So I think it's important for the public to understand the scale of the challenges we're facing. My question really is around about that flexibility. We've got the programme, and I know it'll be based on sound engineering knowledge and evaluations, but we also know that from time to time there are things that happen to roads. For example, You know, there could be landslips that we had in Elgol. There could be deterioration. Have we got some flexibility built into the programme that allows us to work out with the programme if it really is needed?
Yeah, so yeah, of course. And so with 24-25 programme, yeah, I mean, exactly, there is, and to sort of try and tease out questions from what you were saying there when you were talking about I'll sort of go back. You spoke about, is everything committed? You mean from the 23-24 programme initially? So yeah, so if we talk about that, yes, it's all committed, and I suppose it would be remiss of me not to mention that there's always the risks of weather and special events, or extreme weather events. I don't like to use the word luck, because luck's not a great strategy, but we're quite lucky with the recent landslide that we're able to clear it relatively quickly. That could have just as easily been a road washed away, and then that would commit an awful lot more resources to it. So yes, there is a very real risk to everything that we do based on weather events. If we think about this last month, if we just take that as a snapshot, and it's maybe not an indicative snapshot, but it's a real snapshot of what's happened. If it wasn't snow, it was flooding, it was weather, it was wind. So all our resources, we don't have an infinite number of men. Those same men, as members will know, who work on we've got really good, skilled, multi-skilled men who can work pavers, machinery, drivers, gritters, and that's a huge benefit to the area. I suppose as a risk, it means that whenever anything goes wrong, those same men are deployed to fix those issues. So yeah, on paper we are fully committed, and I think we're going to be okay. But I can't hold back the weather, is all I'm going to say. Could you just reiterate your final question in there?
No, I think you've covered the points I was okay. Making. Yep. Okay. Right. Any other members got comments or questions? Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mark, for preparing this. It's quite a comprehensive piece of work. The points that I would like to pick up on is obviously, the budget settlement is yet to be determined, and that will play a part in this. But I think it is worth acknowledging and welcome your reassurances that the work from last year will be complete. I'm sure that will go some way to provide comfort to those in their communities. But I think it is really worth acknowledging the budget constraints that that we have, and that the team do have to work with. We've got some great length of road network, and trying to maintain that as a whole is obviously going to be a very difficult task. And Chair, I suppose that the comment that I'd really like to add to here is, evidently the funding that we get, not just from the council as a whole, but from central government, plays a part in the work that we can do here on Skye. And looking into this a bit further to try and find out the real structural issue, is that the Green Book that the Scottish Government used when awarding local government funding, it puts a heavy weighting on the road usage and not the road length. It's split 66%, 33%. I think this is something that perhaps, Chair, as members, we should be looking to try and raise further, to say, well, actually, the length of the network should be more of a consideration than the road use. It's something that in the same Scottish Government Green Book they do take into account when they're awarding funding allocations for winter maintenance and treatment. So I think, Chair, this is something that we should be really taking up to make sure that not just the Highlands, but Skye in particular gets a fair share of funding, so we can make sure that as much work as possible can get done, and make sure that our roads are in the best condition possible.
Thanks, Councillor Stewart. I mean, I believe there is something going to redesign board, and I think there is a workshop looking again at the criteria for the allocation of funding for roads. And I mean, certainly here in Skye, absolutely the road length has to be central. But I think we also need to look at the condition of our roads and the usage, because at the end of the day, we might have 10,000 people using the roads in January, but in July and August, we've got nearly 1 million people using our roads. So, so I think the points you make are really important. Councillor Mullin.
Indeed, yeah. I think if you look at the figures that we got just the other day from our ward business meeting, the number of visitors that were at the store in January, the huge increase from last year, then our road usage must be probably per kilometre, must be that or per yard, because I'm still pretty old. I think that we must be probably the highest in Scotland. So I think we've got a huge problem coming down down the line over the next 12 months if visitor numbers are going to increase on the percentage that we were quoted for January to the store. However, can I just excuse my ignorance here, but gully emptying, is that basically our drains at the sides of the road? Because I think that we need to really look at how the council addresses this Highland-wide and in Skye in particular. I know that we only have access to a gully emptying machine a very short time in a year, and so therefore, if you take, for example, and I'm sorry about being parochial here, but if you take a walk around Portree that I'm usually dragged out by my wife to take part in, I would reckon probably 80% at least of our gullies are completely blocked, and therefore we're never going to address the problem of the damage that then the water on the roads is causing, unless we have a proper look at how the allocation of time usage of the machines are given to places like Skye and Portree and Callacan and Broadford in particular, because I think we could have a machine there for probably, if you had a machine there for 3 or 4 times the length of time we do have it, then perhaps they would never need to come back for another 10 or 20 years. So I think we really need to look at that seriously. Can I first of all, though, or now, because I've forgotten, can I just thank the workforce for the fantastic work that they have done over the last 12 months here in Skye, because they have been under severe pressure, not only weather-wise, but from, shall we say, members of the public who like to publicise the fact that their road's not been repaired. So I think the workforce have done an exemplary job given the conditions that they've had to work under, and you know, I think they've performed pretty well, pretty high above the ask that their job probably remit gives them, because even the other day at Elgol, for example, the pressure they worked under to clear that landslide, I think they should be really congratulated. Just one wee point, and I welcome obviously this report, and I hope that we somehow get some extra money to even increase the amount of repairs and the amount of surfacing. There was one interesting thing from last year, the road between down towards Edinbane, which I think Gordon had problems getting a company to do that work. Is that going to be able to be addressed in before the end of this financial year, going into next year? And I was over in Raasay at the invitation of the community council, Mac, and one of the points they were raising, and I welcome to see that one of the stretches of road going up to Broghol is going to be looked at, because really the road was, well, it's almost ceased to exist in what you would call a recognisable form for a road. So I hope that one of the points they were raising, though, because the roads are so bad that the vehicles are going round up onto the sides of the road. And in the past, the council have come along, and because the road seems to have been widened, they've laid the tar, the width of the expansion, if you know what I mean. So it's using up more tar. So I think if the council would, and this is a request from the community council in Raasay, because I have no experience of anything to do with road, but if they would stick to the actual width of the real road, rather than trying to cover the bits that the vehicles have created and it makes it look wider, then perhaps we could get a little bit more distance done when we're laying the tar. I may not have explained that properly, because I'm starting to confuse myself now, but certainly on that particular stretch of road going up to Broghol, it was quite clear that some people with big trucks perhaps were going up on and extending the sides of the road, which made it look, because the road is so bad, it makes it look as if the road is actually wider than what it actually is. So when the boys come with the tar, they just lay the tar wider than, is it 3 meters, the road?
About depends.
Yeah, so sometimes they're going to 3.5 meters because it looks as if that road's bigger than it, wider than it is. So, but I think the people in Raasay would welcome the work that you're going to do, and I think it would be useful now in your new position as well if you maybe manage to have a meeting with the Raasay Community Council just to see some of their, listen to some of their suggestions on perhaps things that could be improved, like clearing ditches, etc., that they may be willing to take on themselves if they could get round the obvious legislation that prohibits it at the moment.
Participation request, that kind of thing. Okay, so try if you just allow me again to try and tease out some questions from what you were saying there. So the Raasay, the road width. So it was ever thus. When roadmen come along, they are inclined to look at where when they're surfacing a road, if there's overrun, then vehicles are running on that section of road, so they will instinctively look to put a bit of tar on it because it's running surface. That's just, you know, sort of the inside of a bend. When you see that very often, the roads naturally get widened there. But you're right, there's no structure underneath it. I can discuss that with them. The Eden Bain Road, I don't actually have information on you that, but I will speak to Gordon. I am really lucky, as we said earlier on, that Gordon hasn't vanished into the mist. Thank goodness. So there's going to be an awful lot of information. That transfer knowledge out of Gordon into me will take some time. This is day 6 for me, so I will get that information, and I've made a note of that. The gully emptying. So I think where we benefit in the council is we have a lot of multi-use vehicles, and we have sort of demountable stuff and stuff that we can, but the gully emptier is not one of them. It's a very specific piece of plant, and it's really expensive. And the gully emptying it's obviously a cyclical problem. So when you've got road condition that's relatively good and it's not friable, it's not falling apart, then the gullies will stay empty for longer, or not empty of water, but empty of silt, and ultimately it's silt and gravel that cause them to block up. So, but also when your gullies aren't working properly, that additional water on the road is detriment to the road condition. So it is a cyclical problem. To have a dedicated and committed gully emptier on Skye, even Skye and Raasay, for instance, you would get to the situation really quickly that it'd be sitting idle. So that's, I think, what the council, what we try and do is we try and have it so vehicles are not idle. I wasn't there when the conversation was made about allocation to Skye. But obviously, I assume there's been a calculation done, and it's based on the amount of gullies we have, and across the rest of the area that it's shared with. So, when we've got it, we use it, Drew. But what I will say is that when we've got, again, when we go back to that sort of that multi-use workforce, sometimes we'll get a gully empty and everyone's away busy doing something else, and that causes an issue as well. So anyway, I don't have anything more to add on that. Do you have any? Did I get all your points?
Yeah, I'll come back and speak to you offline after this meeting and discuss it probably more localized rather than holding up this meeting much longer. But yeah, I take your points, and I'm happy to speak to you once you've settled in. It's not fair. 6 days is not. I'll speak to you sometime.
Life isn't fair. Life isn't fair, Drew. It's okay.
Okay, no, thank you for that, Mark. I suppose we need to also mention offlets on our roads, because that's something a lot of members of the public and several in particular are very fixated on. And the point they make is right. If we don't get the water off our roads, then it is going to cause further deterioration. Councillor Monroe.
Thanks, Chair. Congratulations, Mackenzie, on your appointment, and good luck in your role. Just want to endorse Councillor Miller's praise of our workforce and what they've done year after year, and particularly this year, where thousands of tonnes of tar have gone on roads. So they are appreciated, and I think it was good to hear you talk about the skill set they have. They're a very skilled team, and I know that. I think, just again to echo Councillor Miller's comments about Eden Bain, it must be one of the worst settlement roads in our ward. A couple of items there on the capital programme I'm really keen to see, because again, people are coming to me with these issues on these roads. One more point, Matt, would be the A855, and it's a work that's been approved for a safety barrier above Idrigal, just at the top of the brae there. And I was just wondering if you can give the committee an update on that, please?
So we had this was touched upon last week when I was I've actually sent an email asking for that information. I haven't had it back yet, Callum. I was hoping to have it for this committee, but what I will say is that if I can just sort of depart briefly for a second. So in the last 26 months, I've been working in a different area from this, and I've experienced how different areas of the council work well. I was working in Caithness. Now, Caithness have a monthly roads meeting with members, and we can talk about every single thing that comes up, and it becomes a list of a programme. It's really transparent, really useful. And I would like to set up the same for the members, if that's possible. And exactly these points we can bring up and we can track and have a proper Gantt chart, a proper table of what it is we're doing. And so that was, I'm not being mercurial in my response to you. I just don't have that information. And specific member issues, specific community council issues can be in a transparent fashion sort of regularized, and we can work through them if that's possible. So I'm not asking you to cut me slack. I know it's a committee, but it is day 6. So, and as soon as I have that information, I'll get it to you.
Hey, Mark, I think you're in a loser there asking for us to cut you some slack. But anyway,
no. I've seen. I don't want any. I think so. I think one of the members had commented earlier on about we did get a lot of investment over the last 2 or 3 years, which is fantastic. But I mean, it's noted within the report on 3.5 specifically that level of investment it does fall short of what it is to keep that steady state. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a tricky one.
Okay, and can I also pass on my thanks to the workforce. In terms of the workforce numbers, Mac, where are we in terms of vacancies? Are you at full strength in both Portree and Broadford, or are there still outstanding vacancies that require to be filled?
So I'm as far as I'm aware, we're almost at full strength. We just lost our I don't mean lost, sorry, our foreman in the South End, Brendan, has went away to work somewhere else. He handed his notice in, so that will of course leave a gap. Not that a foreman's an integral part of the role, so we will be recruiting back into there to try and as quickly as possible fill that gap. But we will put in place an interim period foreman of some description to keep works going. So it's a big loss, but yeah.
Okay. I think it is really important that we as members make sure that we support you in making sure that our workforce, which is much reduced over a number of years, stays at the number it should be. So thank you for that. Okay, members, we're asked to approve the proposed prioritised area roads capital programme for the Island, Skye and Raasay for 24-25. Are we happy to do that? Okay, thank you, Mike, and we'll see you again members. In the near future. Thank you.
Look forward to working with you all in the future. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye now. Bye.
Okay. Right, we're moving on, members, to a housing performance report. And then we've got housing revenue account, garage rents, and I believe we've got the same officer, Margaret, and Collins with us as well. So housing performance report, Margaret, thank you very much for it. Do you want to say anything, or do you just want to take questions from members? It's up to yourself.
I'll just quickly run through the report, if that's okay with you. That will take a very short period of time. Good morning, members. Members are asked to note the information provided on the performance report that's in front of you this morning for the period 1st of April to 31st of December 2023, specifically Q3 for 2023. Firstly, we look at repairs, and we look at the time taken to complete emergency repairs, and I'm happy to report that that figure is well within the performance target of 14 hours. Non-emergency repairs also within the performance target of 8 days, and you have all those figures in front of you. Tenancy management, we look at average relet times, and I'm happy to report that improved performance during Q3 has significantly improved the cumulative average performance. Some delays are being caused, it's fair to say, due to lack of available resources to carry out some works. The Principal Repairs Officer for the North has joined us this morning, Colin Sharp, and he'll be happy to help out with questions on that subject. Rent arrears, the rent arrears for Q3 have decreased from Q2. We're coming into a period of change with restrictions and emergency protection measures are ending, but for Q3 the arrears are down, and we will continue as a team to support, help and advise all tenants who are experiencing financial hardship. You'll be well aware that the Cost of Living Act was passed by the Scottish Government in 2022 and evictions were temporarily suspended unless arrears were above 2,250. 1st of April sees those emergency protection measures cease, and that will be a different landscape for us all to work in again. We move on to homelessness. 52 homeless presentations for that quarter. I have to say that although there's still significant pressure on the homeless service, that figure I think maybe needs a wee bit more analysis, so it seems high to me. I haven't been able to bottom it out particularly well, so I would ask for some patience on that and I will come back to you. Just like Mac said, we have a monthly housing meeting with all the councillors in Caithness, and if you have the time I'd be happy to offer you that. I've taken interim responsibility for Skye, Allocation, Wester Ross, and it would be good to get to know you all. And that in essence is the report for Q3.
Okay, Margaret, and thank you very much and welcome to your role covering our area. It's nice to see you, and I think that offer of having catch-ups with you will be greatly appreciated. We might not go to monthly, but I think having the opportunity to do, have meetings with you if and when would be really, really appreciated. So thank you for that. Before I go to members, can I just pick up, and I see Colin is with us. In the report it says, due to lack of available resources to carry out some works. And I think Colin knows that I was in touch previously about the difficulty that some of our contractors are having in getting onto the framework and the bureaucracy within the framework that is disincentivizing them to actually become involved in being contractors for the council, or in some cases just giving up. And I'm just wondering, Colin, I know that getting contractors in Skye is a bit more difficult than getting a contractor, say, in Inverness. Has any consideration gone into how we can look at that a bit more, Colin? And where are you, do you think, generally in terms of having contractors available to support not just repairs, but the whole issue round about voids?
Oh, thank you very much, Chair, for that. I'd also like to reiterate, Margaret, if you're looking for regular appointments, I'm happy to attend those as well, so we can get things cleared up quicker rather than later. I'll be honest with you, I don't know what's happening with regards to the framework and the contractors on Connect. That is being dealt with by Matt Rogers, and I've not had any update from him on that. He was going to be responding to that. Regarding the lack of resources, it is a problem that is a regular issue. We have difficulty in obtaining contractors that are looking to work for us. We are back to full strength in our maintenance team. So we're back to 4 maintenance technicians, which is helping alleviate some of the problems that we've got. But we still have issues with contractor availability. Now, a lot of that, as you've rightly said, comes down to a number of contractors not difficulties in using the IT systems and the Connect system for obtaining work and putting work through, whether they're willing to take out the CHAS registration, to enable them to work for the council as well. But that was being dealt with by Matt Rogers. I will try and catch up with Rory McLeod today to see if there is an update on that and provide that to all the members as soon as I possibly can.
Thank you. Okay, members, any other questions or observations for Margaret? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, and hello, Margaret. And
Morning.
just in the report about the relights or whatever, voids, whatever they're called nowadays, relights, I see. Sometimes I just wonder, are we maybe having too much of a priority on trying to relet quickly? I know there used to be a problem in the past, and I apologise for maybe not being up to speed with it these days, but sometimes are we still trying to get the voids down as low as possible rather than trying to maybe giving people an option? Sorry, I'll start again. on the relets, I mean, how do we approach that nowadays? Because in the past, my understanding used to be anyway that people were offered the house, take it or leave it. Whereas I think maybe some of the reason why the relets are longer now, or the gap of the void is longer, is because we try and repair the houses before we relet them. And is that maybe that, in my opinion, should be the priority? Let's give them decent houses rather than throw them in and give them a few pounds to do something yourselves to make it look better. So I don't know whether that is the process now, because it certainly was for a while, a long time ago. So there's a wee bit of concern in that. Is the figure actually, is it not a bad thing to have longer voids, is what I'm trying to say, so that the houses are given to new tenants in a better condition? So sorry, I rambled a bit there.
No, that's fine.
But can I just ask something? Well, there's two things. One's on the repairs as well. Now, I know that the chairman and I are well aware of problems, for example, in some of the properties in Broadford, and Colin's well aware as well. And it doesn't seem to be being resolved. And I'm sorry, it's not being resolved. So again, that gives a wee slew to the figures in the report. And I just wondered, again, maybe outside this meeting, that we can have a discussion on how we solve the problems, because the houses are not in good condition, no matter what, whoever's fault it is. The houses in parts of Broadford don't seem to be in good conditions, and we wonder we can maybe fix that. But my main gripe, and it's not in the report, but I'm going to, and Colin's aware of it as well, so Margaret, this is new, especially for you. The lack of maintenance round about the property is a bugbear of mine. The new accommodation in Portree, and the reason is because I see it almost every day, and it's really bugging me. One would have assumed when we were building new properties that there would have been money aside for ground maintenance round about the properties, and luckily at this time of year it doesn't look so bad. Last summer, in the new properties in Crookham Place, I would say that the ground maintenance was atrocious, and I'm expecting it to be just as atrocious this summer unless somebody does something about it. And if we compare new builds done by the Housing Association, their maintenance is far superior, and I don't see why they should be any better than the council, because at the end of the day, if we don't maintain the grounds around about our properties, how can we expect the residents to respect the surrounding areas as well? That's it. Thank you.
Thanks for that information, Councillor Miller. I'll have to get up to speed on Crookham Place, so I'm not going to be able to say anything that would delight you today, but I'll go away, I'll look at it, and I'll come back to you.
And in regards to the other points, if you don't mind me coming in there, Margaret, regarding the void properties, all void properties have to meet what's known as the empty home standard prior to us being able to let those properties. Now, we have in the past been a victim of our own success by providing well beyond that standard, which is raised expectation levels as to what a property should or should not be and how it's handed out. A lot of it was down to decoration as well, but every single property that is let must meet that standard. Our goal is still to turn these properties around as quickly as we can to provide them back to our colleagues in housing for let to local residents or whoever it will be let to, because that cuts down on the homeless accommodation, it cut down on, rent loss. All of these things are affected by the void turnaround performance. So our target is to turn them around as quickly as we possibly can, and we will only do what is required to bring them up to that empty home standard, to ensure that it meets that standard. Regarding the issues in Broadford, a quick update on that. We have instructed one further survey to be carried out by an independent surveyor in Inverness, who should be making contact with the affected tenant. After that survey, if there is no recommendation in regards to repairs to the property that may be required, and I fully expect there not to be, that's really us drawing a line under it. We can do no more, to prevent the problems that the gentleman's having. I will have a conversation with Margaret at a later date offline regarding the tenant and what we can do through the housing management side to try and assist that person in their management of living in the property.
Okay, thank you. I'll go
Can
to.
I just say, sorry, Chairman, can I come back in there? I mean, it's not just a tenant, there are various tenants round about that area as well. Thank you. And maybe, is there any response on the maintenance? Sorry, Chairman. Ground maintenance.
The ground maintenance at the Crewkin Flats. Right.
I think Margaret said she was going to come back.
She's going to look into it. But I have been in contact with her colleagues in development infrastructure regarding the maintenance of that groundwork. And I think a lot of it's to do with the banks and how steep the banks are. But that is something that we will come back to you on.
Yeah, and I think we've still got our environmental budget. I think so we need to be looking at the allocation of that. So I think, Margaret, that's a conversation we probably need to have quite quickly, given the time of year we're in. Because I think it's been underspent now for a couple of years and it's sitting there. So we need to make sure that we make use of this money.
That's fine. Okay. I'll come back to you as soon as I'm able, Councillor Finlayson.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Stewart and then Councillor Monroe. And then, Margaret, if you take the answers to both members one after another, that would be appreciated. So first of all, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Margaret, for this. It's a very positive report on the whole. And I would just like to, with the renters, I know that Jake and the team have made significant progress in reducing some of the sort of more high-level renters, and that's really good progress, actually. I suppose, and you picked up on this during the presentation, was that spike in homelessness in Q2, and I think that's a real cause for concern. I'm glad to hear that you're going to be investigating this further, especially with the new legislation surrounding homeless presentations at a Scottish Government level. So I think it's really important that we find out what the driver is behind this and see how we can support people best within our communities. But again, pick up on a point from Councillor Miller to do with the condition of some of the properties. I think when it comes to renters, and something I've said at this committee and indeed at Housing and Properties, I think we've really got to be looking at how we can support our tenants, and that's through measures like energy efficiency. I think when it comes to renters, I'd be really keen to see if there's a correlation between the rent arrears and between the energy efficiency of properties, the EPC rating, because especially in a cost of living crisis, people have choices to make, and if it's between paying the rent or heating their home, then and that's something that's within the control of the council. We can say for an investment in energy efficiency, we're going to alleviate some of the financial pressures on our tenants. So I'd be really keen to know if there's been any work done to look into that.
Okay, Councillor Monroe.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, Margaret and Colin. Margaret, nice to meet you. Colin, maybe for you, this is to do with a situation in Uig, rat infestation, which happened was August, September last year, and I'm very grateful for the amenities team who cleared some very large areas of long grass. Luckily, it was September time, and we didn't have the grass didn't get much a chance to grow back, but just as we have an environmental budget, and as this has happened on other occasions, is this an area we could look at as a red flag area where we really need to make sure we get proactive and don't let the grass get to a stage where we're going to have the same situation again?
I'll come in on that, so thank you very much. Regarding the energy efficiency, I completely agree that is something that should be looked at, and we should be doing as much as possible. The difficulty with that is costs. To externally insulate a single property, you're now looking at about £40,000, to do one property. So you can kind of do the sums. It's going to be a very, very expensive thing to do. Insulating a property as well, it absolutely has to be done, but it comes along with other things as well. You may have to extend the roof line, which means doing additional roof work, so those costs can increase and increase. I know the council are looking at energy efficiency. very in depth and trying to come up with a plan as to how to improve that, but that's a lot of houses Highland wide and a lot of funds that are required to do it. Regarding the Oog rat infestation, I have spoken to the maintenance officer regarding that, and we're looking at a plan of potentially taking the grass away and putting down gravel, you know, and bedding it in, but I think that's also on a slope in that area, so that has to be looked at to ensure that the gravel obviously stays in place and doesn't all fall down to the bottom of the slope. So it is something that I've discussed with the maintenance officer. We are looking at getting costs in to do that, and that will be part of the environmental budget.
Okay, members, I'm not seeing any other hands up, so we're asked to note the information provided on housing performance, and Margaret's going to get in touch with us and probably set up a meeting in the near future, and then we'll try and have some regular meetings if that's okay. Moving on then to the housing revenue account, garage rents. Again, Margaret, did you want to give a very brief summary? Because we're being asked to agree this, but if you want to just give a quick summary, that'd be good.
Okay, I will do. Thank you for that. So basically you have in front of you, well, for a start, the local priorities for garages has been devolved to the areas, and it is very much within your gift to decide what increase you want to apply to the garages and garage sites. You've got some tables in front of you which shows the number of garages and garage sites on the Isle of Skye and Raasay and what sort of revenue that brings to us. The three options being considered, although it is within your gift to decide on any figure today, other committees have decided on 10%, 20%, not necessarily the figures that I'm going to give you today, but it's an illustration. 6.5%, 7.3%, 7.95%. You have those figures in front of you. And it's up to you to decide what increase you want to apply. You can apply a different increase to garage sites if you so choose.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to move the recommendation that we go for 7.95, and I don't know if members have any other members have other opinions. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to agree the recommendation for the percentage increase, but I also think, you know, looking at the garage rents, we've got 5 of them, and you know, looking at the recommendations, the difference between the prices here, the suggested increases, amounts to only £26 annually. Now, I'm minded to move an additional, move an amendment to this, if the chair is not willing to accept. And it's, you know, the decision making with this, I appreciate that logic for why it should come to committee, and it's one of those things where, you know, if we had a large number of garages, you know, I can see why that could be a good thing. But I think, you know, what we should probably do is align this with the rate of increase for the council house rents, because, you know, the amount of time in, you know, preparing this report and stuff, and doing the modelling for this, I'm sure it probably outweighs the you know, the financial benefit to the council. So, you know, I think in the interest of cost efficiency, a streamline, you know, we should probably delegate this back and say, well, you know, we're going to have an increase in line with the council house rents, just so it doesn't need to come back, because as I said, it is such a small percentage, and I think if we align this with something like the council house rents, then, you know, that would streamline things to be perhaps more not only cost efficient, but, you know, free up our hard-working officers' time to engage with their tenants and do other work. But I'll put in the chat what the additional recommendation would be.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Stewart. Any other members with anything to say with regard to Councillor Stewart's additional recommendation to increasing by 7.9% this year, but his recommendation relates to future years? Councillor Monroe.
Thanks, Chair. I don't see how onerous this is for officers in terms of it's a simple spreadsheet, a few boxes. Saying that his proposal of fixing it to the council housing rent is not a bad proposal, so I'm not going to put an amendment against that, so or a motion against that. So I'd accept that.
Okay, Councillor Miller.
Sorry, I didn't understand what Callum said there. Sorry.
Okay, so the recommendation, I'm moving the recommendation that we increase the rent by 7.95%. And Councillor Stewart would like to add an additional recommendation that to save officers' time in future and to prevent bringing a paper to committee, we just raise it from now on in line with the rent increase that's agreed by Housing and Property.
Are you agreeing that?
I'm happy to accept that, and Councillor Monroe is happy to accept it. So, being the democratic group we are, I thought we'd ask you, Mr. Councillor.
Working as a team, this is the first. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would have thought it would be the interest of the council just to try and sell the garages and get rid of them off the books, but there we are. I'm happy to go with the flow. Yep.
Okay, so you've heard Councillor Miller's additional thought there, Margaret. So it may be something that we look at because given the number of garages they are, I'm assuming that the tenants of these garages are probably long-term tenants and have had them from forever and probably intend to keep them forever. So that might be something that is worth looking at. Councillor Monroe, is your hand still up?
Yes, Chair, just a slight addition to the additional recommendation from Councillor Stewart there is saying, I think you as area chair should reserve the right to call this report and change above or below that figure as and when. So I've just been at the chat at the moment, so I just wonder if Councillor Stewart will accept that addition.
Yeah, I think that's sensible. You know, if for whatever reason it's not in keeping with what needs to happen, I think we should be able to call it back. But just as a standard practice, it should be tied to the rents.
Okay, Alistair, do you want to read out just so everybody's clear about what we've just agreed?
Yes, members. I think members, the committee have agreed a 7.95% increase in garage rents for 24-25. Members have also agreed, as in the chat, the committee shall delegate the decision-making authority regarding the rent increase for the Skye and Raasay garages. The rent increase for these garages will be set to align with the rate of increase applied to council house rents. And in addition, the area committee reserves the right to change this arrangement at the request of the area chair.
We're all agreed, members?
Members happy with that?
Yep, okay. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Margaret, and thank you, Colin. And as I say, Margaret, we'll hopefully see you in the near future.
Great, lovely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay. Okay, members, I'm just checking the time. Do you want to take a 5-minute break or do you want to continue? I know Alan McKinney's been on tenterhooks there all morning, so I don't want to steal his thunder. Okay, we'll continue. So we're moving on to the waste management and environmental health, an item about abandoned cars. So Alan's going to give us an update on the progress of the recycling improvement service and the Portree waste station. And Alan Yates is going to come in about abandoned vehicles. So can I welcome Alan and Alan, Alan M and Alan Y, Alan Mai. Okay, so Team Alan Mai. So I'm going to go to Alan McKinney first.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Yeah, as the Chair mentioned, it is a bit of a double act this morning, so please, I hope the two Allans don't in any way confuse matters here. But certainly the first part of the paper that's detailed in section 4 provides information on the Recycling Improvement Fund service change. That includes the infrastructure development for the Portree waste transfer station. Members will note the Recycling Improvement Fund project will deliver improved recycling and reduced levels of residual waste. And when I speak about residual waste, that is waste that cannot be recycled. So the existing general waste bin will be converted to collect the containers element of the recycling. That is the plastic bottles, pots, tubs, trays, cans, tins, foils and cartons. The existing blue bin currently used for mixed recycling will be converted to collect the fibre mix, that is paper and card. General waste or non-recycling bin capacity will be reduced as part of the service change, and for Skye and Raasay households, that will provide householders with a new 180 litre non-recycling bin. The existing bin is 240 litres. The timescale for introduction of the service change is included on the table below section 4.6 of the paper. You will note the introduction of Skye and Raasay is scheduled for March 2025. This timescale is linked to the completion of the waste transfer station development. The waste transfer station development incorporates the construction of a new building that will be used for bulk storage prior to the transportation of the two separately collected and stored streams of recycling. And you will note the completion of the building is scheduled for early 2025, of course, in advance of the rollout of the service change. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions directly connected to that part of the table now, or if you wish, to the end after Alan details section 5.
No, I think we'll take your part of the report first, Alan. Thank you very much for it. Can I maybe ask round about the Portree waste transfer station? I note that it's down for March 25. Where are we in terms of a contractor to carry out these works? I mean, I know there are transfer stations happening elsewhere. Are we looking at an individual contract for the Portree waste transfer station? And I'm sure that there may very well be maybe local companies who might be interested in that. And are you foreseeing any issues round about the development of the Portree transfer station?
We're certainly all the work that our design colleagues are focusing on at the moment is around the design element of the work, and that's in advance of the planning application being submitted and the tender to contract the work. The timescale, if I was going to raise any concerns, and there is generally no risks highlighted other than it's a fairly tight timescale. I think we all recognise that, and the need for this to go as planned and to ensure that we do have the transfer station there complete and ready to operate by the March period of next year. So the timescale's fairly tight, Chair, but other than that, there's no additional concerns being raised at this time.
Okay, before I go to Councillor Miller, the other one, Alan, is, so in terms of the changes to the bins and the sizes and the colours, etc., can I assume that, once the new transfer station is in place and the new regime is up and running, that we have got some simple literature that will be distributed to the public so they understand just exactly what the changes are, and green to blue and blue to whatever, just so there's that clear understanding of things?
Yeah, and it's right to mention that, Chair. It's such a crucial part of the whole project is how we communicate this information to householders and businesses. The good thing for Skye, and I hope the reassuring thing for Skye and Raasay householders is that we're starting the phased delivery of this from April, and we'll provide clear communication literature. You'll see the standard of it before it comes to Skye. And hopefully that in some way will reassure you. It's a broad project, the communication element, and it touches on written literature as well as online literature and press releases as well. So it's a very broad communication project that I'm sure will make sure that the project runs as smoothly as it possibly can do.
Thank you very much, Alan. Drew, do you want to come in? No. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so thank you very much for that, Alan. And I think that's a very comprehensive summary of everything that's happening. And I'm sure through Community and Places Committee and also through engagement with members locally, you'll keep us posted how things move forward. That's for sure, Chair. I'm delighted to do that. Okay, thank you. And can I also welcome John? I didn't see you initially, John. So why your name isn't Alan, I don't know, but it's good that we've got a John to break up the Alan. So thank you. So Alan's going to talk about abandoned vehicles. I think Alan, through communications I've had with you, that it is quite a topical subject in some areas of Skye. And I think members of the public get quite agitated about why we don't move on vehicles, what the role of the police is, what the role of our service is. So I think maybe a summary from yourself would be very helpful. You're on mute. We're not hearing you, Alan. No, we seem to have a technical hitch. Maybe it's your heads. Maybe try without your headphone, Alan. I don't know how it would work.
Hi, Chair. Is that any better at all?
Yeah, good now.
Is that good coming through?
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I've asked one of my colleagues, John Murray, he's the senior AHO for Skye, to come into the call as well. And we've also got Coyle Hunter, one of our local EHOs on the call. More than happy to talk through and summarise the position as in the committee report. And obviously we can talk around the general situation with abandoned vehicles. If there are specific individual cases, John and Coyle are more than happy to come back and discuss those in detail with members. So just referring to the committee report, what I've done here is just trying to summarise some of the issues that we've got with abandoned vehicles. As you highlighted, Chair, there are issues around abandoned vehicles that we can understand member of the public getting concerned about, and they're summarised in paragraph 5.1. They're an eyesore, they can have a safety risk, particularly around children, and all the other issues they've got there in terms of becoming possibly a focal point for vandalism. We have had a look at the numbers. Skye, Highland wide, we're over sort of 500 a year reports of abandoned vehicles. And in Skye, they're typically around 10 to 15 per year, although last year we did notice an increased number of reports submitted. Now, in some cases, that might be separate reports about the same vehicle, but that's the sort of numbers that we're dealing with. The legislation itself, not the most recent piece of legislation, 1978. And I've got to say it's one of the bits of legislation that's got its challenges. It does set out the overall responsibility for the local authority to look specifically at abandoned vehicles. One of the challenges of the legislation as set out in 5.5 is there's not actually a definition given in the legislation, but there is general guidance available, and some of the points I've raised there comes from UK Government and Police Scotland. And these are the sort of things that you would expect for an abandoned vehicle. So the sort of example there where it's been left for a significant amount of time, it's significantly damaged, it's been burnt out. They're your sort of classic examples of abandoned vehicles. But it's not an exhaustive list because it's not defined in legislation. One of the issues that we do find is we do deal with reports of maybe a vehicle being poorly parked, or people using car parks to do vehicle repairs. Again, these are not necessarily abandoned vehicles, but they are a nuisance, they are causing problems, but there's different ways of trying to address those, and different agencies involved. And again, paragraph 5.7 I mentioned there, particularly DVLA, key role in terms of dealing with untaxed vehicles. We have done joint work in the past quite successfully with DVLA. I've got to say this is pre-COVID. We will be looking to try and re-engage with them where they have come up and done a targeted campaign of an area looking at untaxed vehicles. It takes a bit of coordination between DVLA, the police and the council, storage facilities, these sort of things. But again, that's something we will look to do in the future. The other key agency is obviously Police Scotland, and they have got the statutory role, particularly if vehicles are causing obstruction or they're causing a danger to other road users. That's where we'd expect the police to be involved. The other area that they'd also take a role in is if there are reports of people driving vehicles without an MOT. Again, that's for the police to follow up on. Paragraph 5.8, members, I've tried to summarise sort of the overall position where we are with things. That, as you're all aware, environment health, we have got officers around the Highlands, but it's a limited resource and a wide range of statutory roles that we've got to deal with. And when we were prioritising, as you'll see in the report that goes to CMP for our operational plan, we do look at factors such as public health, public safety, environmental risks. When it comes to abandoned vehicles, yes, we will follow up on the reports, but priority amongst that will really be given to the ones where there's a clear safety risk. So that's examples where it's been burnt out, it's vandalised. Those are the ones that we want to deal with quickly, and the legislation does give us good powers to deal with them. Where a vehicle's in that state that it just ought to be destroyed, that's where we can deal with them quite effectively. Final thing I mentioned in the report is we have got an officer group at the moment with housing, legal, fleet and the parking team, and we are trying to look at the council's approach to abandoned vehicles. One of the things that we're looking to explore is, at the moment when we uplift vehicles, they go for destruction. We don't store them if they're taxed for any length of time until the tax expires. Other councils do have that, but it's not something the Highland Council have looked at so far. But it is one of the things the officer group is discussing, whether we could look at having the storage facilities, which could also be used for the parking enforcement team under Shane Manning. And that's something we'll be looking to come back to members at some stage on. Hopefully that just gives an overview of the position, Chair, but happy to take any questions on the issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. I think certainly that flow chart you've given us, which I have circulated to several members of the public who are unhappy with abandoned vehicles, is really helpful. Interestingly, one member of the public who's in touch with me quite regularly about a particular abandoned vehicle sent me this in terms of the definition. Abandoned vehicles, it says there's no legal definition. If so, what is stopping the council from adopting a resident-friendly definition that supports people living in an area as well? So there's one for you. So basically saying, yeah, we see that list of stuff, but what about the residents who are putting up with these vehicles?
I could go back in on that one, Chair.
Yeah, thanks.
When we look at the definition there, again, we've got that sort of general guidance. What we also look at is there is case law and there's also ombudsman's cases. And a significant number of particularly ombudsman cases is from councils where they're being pulled up for removing vehicles where it's questionable whether it's been abandoned and whether the council's actually acting lawfully in those circumstances. So this is one of the things when the officers, and again, this is what adds to the time, we do want to try and find local information on the ownership. If we can find the owner, we'll obviously discuss with them our views on our view if it is an abandoned vehicle and their views on, well, what are you actually doing with it? What's the story behind it? And often other councils have been picked up for where somebody has actually said, yeah, I've got the vehicle there, I'm going to do repairs on it. And they've been maybe just a bit too enthusiastic in terms of, we're going to remove it straight off. What you've got to be reasonable and proportionate in these circumstances. Again, there's case law on that. If somebody is coming back with a reasonable explanation, that's something that's got to come into our judgment of how we actually deal with these. So those are issues that we look at. So as much as I can sympathise with the resident, we've got to have a look at those sort of general principles before we go forward.
No, I think that's very useful. And before I go to Councillor Monroe, what's the situation then, Alan, with a vehicle that has been left abandoned, or the residents feel it's been left abandoned? The vehicle owner has left and is living hundreds of miles away, but has basically said, well, I ain't coming back for it. I don't care what happens to it. Are we then able to move things forward a bit faster, or are we still under constraints roundabout, worrying that we're going to jump the gun too early, if you like?
Again, it's very much down to the individual circumstances, and what we'd be looking to do is make contact with the owner and find what is their intentions, what's the reasonableness. An example I'm talking about there is not where it's burnt out, vandalised, it's where the car's in reasonably good condition. If it still has tax, then we're into that circumstances. We don't have a storage facility, so we wouldn't be looking to move that vehicle. That's where if we take a fresh approach in the future and we had storage, that then opens the options there to look at that side. So in those circumstances, we would be looking to contact the owner, see what the circumstances are, and obviously try and encourage them to look at all the options they are for getting the vehicle uplifted themselves.
Okay, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Councillor Miller?
Sorry, I thought somebody else was coming in there before me. Yeah, sorry. Abandoned vehicles. It's obviously quite a tradition for people living out in the rural areas just to store their old vehicles in the croft. going back to probably the late 70s, there was such an amount of that sort of vehicle situations on Skye that there was an amnesty given to people that they could hand them in or get them picked up at no cost. So we don't want to go back to that scenario again. So I know your numbers are quite low and increased in 2023 to 30. But what is the situation then? Because they're not really abandoned. They're just being stored by the people because it costs money to get them taken away. So does this legislation cover that scenario when, because you say in the report that there are or there could be environmental health risks to vehicles that are stored on croftland, for example, for years. So does this legislation actually cover that? Are we just looking at vehicles that are abandoned in car parks or on public roads?
It's one of these challenging situations, and the general principle of the legislation is if the owner of the land doesn't objects to the vehicle being removed, the local authority really couldn't take that forward. But if you take it on a wider spectrum, if somebody was almost running a scrapyard on a bit of land, you're then into potentially other forms of legislation that might come into effect. So SEPA would deal with potential pollution issues. Again, there's potential licensing, potential planning issues. If somebody's moving in that wide spectrum of what could be one car in a croft to maybe 20 cars in a croft, there are different scenarios in there, different legislation that could be looked at. Again, it's very much down to the individual circumstances, but the general principle around abandoned vehicles, if the landowner is objecting to removal, it wouldn't really be taken forward, but that's where this other legislation may be considered.
Yeah, sorry, just to come back to it, but you're talking of, if we're talking in the report, it mentions that there's there can be health risks to vehicles abandoned on a croft, for example, or somebody's garden even. But the owners are happy to have it there. Is it the council's duty to have these removed, and who therefore is financially liable to pay for the removal of these vehicles?
I think this is where it's starting to move into the vehicles actually being treated as waste. So if somebody is not disposing of waste correctly, there is legislation to cover that in terms of the Environment Protection Act, and people can be prosecuted for illegal waste. But that's where we would be having a very close discussion with SEPA on their consideration on the actual circumstances of the case itself. But I would say it would be a very unusual circumstance if it's one vehicle that somebody's storing with an intention of maybe using it for spares or something like that. That's not going to be the sort of thing that's going to be looked at. It's more, in my mind, would be where it's moving on to the sort of commercial sense of significant volumes of vehicles being stored.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I can remember the scenario Councillor Miller's pointing out. There were a lot of hen houses in some crofts in Skye that were Ford Escorts, Hillman Hunters, etc., etc. So I do think that we've got less of them now, though, Drew.
But
Okay,
there was a day when there was a company came up from, I think it was from Yorkshire, and they were on Skye for probably 6 to 9 months, and they were taking away vehicles that had been deposited and stored on crofts, etc., because there was no cost to the people to have these removed. There was an amnesty at that time, and this company, it was a very lucrative situation for them to come up, and they stayed on Skye. I think it was for about 9 months, and they cleared Skye completely of all abandoned wrecked vehicles. It was fantastic. So we don't want to go back to the scenario when that needs to be applied again. So I think any improvement on the legislation would be welcomed, and any efforts that council can make to remove any vehicles as quickly as possible would be welcomed as well by I think by everyone in the communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just on that, Alan, is the money that can be made for scrap now still as lucrative as it once was? Are the costs now prohibitive, you think?
It is variable, the cost of scrap, and we found that in the past. We'd see more abandoned vehicles when there was no value in scrap. If there's a better value, then again, you've got people. But I think things have progressed in terms of, you'll all be aware of adverts in terms of we'll pick up any car and any value, that side of things. So there are more options, I think, for people to actually seek ways, easier options to get vehicles moved. So I think that will help going forward.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, but I'm conscious that John has come in and not been allowed to say anything. John, is there anything you want to add?
It's not a bad thing being invited but not asked to say anything. The only thing I would maybe add is just to, when you're talking to constituents and maybe for your own selves, is to be aware that the abandoned vehicles provisions are nested under the Refuse Disposal Amenities Act. That is all about waste. A lot of the times we get a lot of complaints about vehicles have just been, in the client's mind, abandoned, but they've just been left for however long, but they are in good condition. The owner at the time has not made an attempt to dispose of the vehicle at that point. That's when Alan was saying about cars where they've been burnt out. You know, there's clear evidence to suggest that that's going to be the last resting place of that vehicle. And in that instance, these easily fall into the abandoned vehicles under the legislation. What's a wee bit more tricky is where somebody parts up a car, for example, and just walks away for months, for however long, you know, and that's where it becomes really tricky, especially when these vehicles still have their licence or, you know, road tax in place. We've got to leave them until that expires. So if you're dealing with, you know, your own constituents, if you're getting members of the public approaching you in that, if you can help explain that as well, just put that kind of context into it. Just because a car's been left doesn't necessarily mean it falls under the legislation, and we don't have the powers then to necessarily remove it. That was all.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so can I thank Alan, and John for these two reports today. I think it's been very useful for members to get the updates and to get a definition round about what is meant by abandoned cars, and certainly that flow chart is something I'm sure that will be very useful for passing on to constituents. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Cheers.
Okay, is Alison with us?
I am, Chair. Good morning. Good afternoon, members, in fact.
Okay, well, thanks, Alison. So I'm delighted to welcome Alison Clark, the Head of Community Support and Engagement, to committee today. And Alison's going to give a presentation which will provide a high-level overview of the background reasons for the review, new roles and focus of the team. And I think it's important that we remember that Alison's going to be outward-looking and looking at the challenges facing the team, and more importantly, what it means for communities, which is, after all, what's important to them and to us. So over to you, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So thanks very much for the invitation to give you an update on the review of the Community Support and Engagement team. So over the course of the last year, there's been a restructure of the team, and it's what many people would understand as the ward management team. That's probably what's more common in most people's minds. The work to consider this has included development sessions with staff, with senior council officials, but also with elected members through the redesign board process. And the new structure was agreed by members at a meeting of the council in October. So recruitment to the new team is almost complete, and they're transitioning into their new roles, and recognising that this is a process. It's not something that's just going to happen overnight. Now, the reason for the restructure is recognising that the roles of the team have changed over time. I think the original ward management team dates back to 2007, so roles have changed over time. There are new legislative duties, such as those outlined in the Community Empowerment Act, particularly in relation to the likes of asset transfer, greater focus on community planning. But there's also been a change of focus within the council over the last number of years, at greater move to local decision making, local prioritisation such as place planning, and also supporting community involvement and development. So there is a need to recognise that things have changed, and a need to prioritise the work of the team accordingly onto those areas, hence the need for the restructure. So there are elements of the role that will continue and that will be very familiar. And of course, what is important is that there's consistency in approach in the team across the area, However, that still means that there's flexibility within local areas. What's important within one part of Highland isn't necessarily the same across the board. So that local flexibility is still really important. There is a new structure in place for the team. The team will work across an area geography of 3. So that will be north and east, Inverness and south, and for this area, west and mid. Within each team, there is a senior community development manager who will be responsible for supporting strategic planning within a partnership context and with members, but also lead across the council on key areas of work, for example, place planning and poverty and inequality. There will be 2 community development managers within each of the 3 teams. Their role will have a greater focus on enabling and coordinating partnership work, place planning and cross-service agency projects. There's also a new role within the team, which is a community support officer. They'll be the first point of contact for community queries, for community councils, and supporting communities to develop community asset transfers and also around local grant funding as well. So for the west and the mid area, there'll be 1.5 community support officers for the team. All team members will work across the whole west and mid area, and there will be different leads on different elements across the areas. There will, however, remain one single point of contact for each committee area. We recognise that that's important both for members, partners and community contacts. And for Skye and Raasay, the single point of contact will remain Willie McKinnon. So there is a member briefing pack just being finalised, and that will set out the key contacts within the different functions, and the details of contacts and the new team structure as well will also be shared with community partners and contacts within each area. Members, there will be a more detailed briefing session at one of your business meetings in terms of operational day-to-day working, and the whole team will attend the business meeting in a couple of weeks in relation to that. So happy to take any questions, members, and I hope that was helpful.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Alison. I think that's been really useful. I think what is very important is that the community understand what the changes are. And at this stage, Willie has been our ward manager since I can remember, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that he's a central cog in the wheel that enables our ward and our area to work efficiently and to support communities. So I'm delighted that Willie's still going to be our community development manager, although now we're going to have to share him a bit more with other parts of the world. But I'm sure Willie will be able to cope with that. But I just think it's important to put on record, certainly my appreciation, I'm sure other members' appreciation of all Willie does and has done. Suppose my question is, we're beginning to understand it. How do we make sure that the community understand it?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, and what we will do is to try and get the messages out across the board, who the community can go to for certain elements of the work as well. So whilst Willie remains, actually his role is changing. It's really important that Willie's still the single point of contact. However, so for example, community councils, there will be a key contact for community councils to be able to link in if they've got any specific queries, and we'll be pushing that information out through the usual contact networks that we have within each area, slightly different within each area naturally, so that communities know where the contact points are. And I think that's why it's important as well, Chair, that we recognise that this is a transition. It's not something that just is going to happen and everyone's going to suddenly have to know who all the new folk are within the team. Recognise that this will be a process, and we'll point people in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Miller.
You're making me feel old now, Alison. 2007, when the ward managers were created, and we certainly, as John has just said, we certainly made the right choice when we appointed Willie McKinnon. I won't say any more on that just now. Yeah, I think I'm glad that you said that we're going to get briefing packs put out to members, because some of us, when we're getting more mature, change is not easy. You know, it's the good old days were still remembered without the rose-tinted specs. So I think it's quite important that we are able to digest the briefing before we have a discussion at our business meeting of what actually it all means. I welcome what you said there, because we've always said, I think, that there has to be flexibility, because Skye and Raasay Ward 10 is completely different from, no disrespect to Caithness or Sutherland, and certainly totally different from the Inverness area, which covers the area committee. So we are unique in many ways. So I would certainly welcome more information on what it all means, to be honest, because yeah, it's going to be quite difficult. The only concerns I do have is that and I know some of it is probably monetary, is that we seem to be stretching our staff more and more, covering bigger and wider areas, which are difficult in itself. And if you look at, Ward 5, our neighbouring ward, the differences between Glenelg and wherever it is, just Peffer and Ullapool, how do people actually work on a team with so many differences? And Skye and Raasay, again, is different because we are quite compact an area, but there are differences between Raasay and Skye as well. So I'm glad that you recognise that there is a need for flexibility, and even in a ward such as ours, or an area such as ours, there is quite differences between the south of Skye, between Raasay, don't forget Rona, and of course the north of Skye as well. So, but no, thank you, and I'm looking forward to getting the briefing papers, and I hope it's quite simple for people of my age to understand. And I would welcome, obviously, a briefing with you, a ward business meeting when that's arranged. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Munro.
Thanks, Chair. Afternoon, Alison. Thank you for the update. I won't go over what Councillor Miller has said. I think, to be honest, the biggest risk to this is the local councillors, is the local members, I think, not actually understanding and being, and I'm not referring to any specific councillor here, but I just think that we need, the briefing pack will be useful, but I think it's important that the structure is robust enough to say to local members, well, this is the structure, how it's going to work now. You have to follow these pathways, and not pick up the phone to your old, or to somebody or rely on over the years. I think it's important that members buy in, and that's probably that's the biggest risk to this transition. But yeah, thanks for the update, and we'll hear more going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Callum. I think, although you didn't name anyone there, I think Councillor Miller and I are probably the two gentlemen you were referring to. Councillor Miller, do you want to have a final word again?
Sorry, no, it doesn't need to be the final word. I wrote things down, then I forgot to read it. What happens to areas that don't have community councils? How are they going to be kept in the loop of things? Because I think, I'm just thinking of Skye. We have two areas which were unable to form community councils. One with a population of 200 or 300, and one with a population of 3,000. So how are these communities going to be involved in and informed on the changes going forward? Thanks, Chairman.
Over to you, Alison.
Thank you, and thank you, members, and thank you for your comments. In terms of that last point, Councillor Miller, I suppose it's always been a challenge that we've had in different parts of Highland at different times where we have gaps in community council membership. And, whilst we always try our best to try and get the community councils up and running, sometimes there are gaps, and unfortunately gaps for longer periods. Over the last number of years, and actually particularly since COVID, there's been such a range of different groups that have developed within local communities that when we tend to send things out to community councils now, we actually send them out to a much broader range of groups, our community resilience group network, as we still term it. So we try and share that information as widely as possible. We still have fortnightly briefings that go out, and they'll go out to that wider grouping, so that we try and there's a range of different groups that are on that. Development trusts are on that, as well as local more resilience type groups, as well as our community councils as well. So we try and spread the message as much as possible and share that information, because we recognise that there are different representative groups in different areas, but hopefully we'll be able to get those two community councils up and going at some point over the next 6 months, because it always does leave a gap when there isn't anyone operating at a particular time. And just a couple of general points, members, the piece that you were talking about, Councillor Miller, about the the roles and the nature of the roles. I suppose there is a refocus priority. There are refocus priorities for the team as part of this, and that's part of managing that work across that broader geography, and making sure that we're making best use of the resources that we have available to the council. So we will support members as part of that transition, which I think Councillor Monroe, what you were referring to. We will support not just members, but also community contacts as well through that transition, so that we can move into those new ways of working. But thank you very much, members, for all your comments.
Okay, Alison, thank you very much for coming to committee today. And as I say, as members, we look forward to the briefings once they're confirmed, and I'm sure it'll be something that will be expected to take to community councils as well, to support them and also engage with other community groups. So once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, members, we're moving on to item 11, Modified West Highland Islands Amended Core Paths Plan. So I think we've got Phil with us today. We have discussed this at length previously. So Phil, if you just want to give us a very, very brief overview, and I see that members are then asked to agree the changes.
Yes, thank you, John. Chair, yes, as you say, we have discussed this previously. You're aware that there's a couple of changes that were suggested after the consultation, both public and with land managers. These two came from Forestry and Land Scotland, the owners. Relatively minor changes, and they're seen in the appendix there on the maps. The one at Callachen was really one section of that is just not accessible, and so it made sense that they suggest that as not being appropriate for a core path. And the second one, they were suggesting that one be removed because it runs parallel to an existing core path, and this gives them some operational sort of flexibility, which we would agree with, that certainly if work was required in the core path route, then the one that has been suggested as a candidate would be temporarily the route that people would choose. This is put before you mainly because we have to have this sort of formally recorded should the Scottish Government look into these issues and sort of see the reasons for these changes after the public consultation. You'll note that obviously we're asking you to approve these changes suggested by Forestry and Land Scotland, and also to agree that these changes do not require any further public consultation. The wording of the Act states that it really should, it's not specific as to who should be consulted, but just as notify such persons as consider appropriate. Now, as the public have had the opportunity to comment on these original proposals before these changes, and no comments other than from the landowner were received regarding them, we feel as long as the landowners are happy, the local access forum have also given opinions on this, and then you as local ward members agree that, we feel that that probably is the appropriate level of consultation, and just ask if you would agree with that approach. And then we're in a position to add this to the whole of the Western Highlands and Islands Core Path Plan, ready for submission to the Scottish Government.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Well, I'm certainly happy to move the recommendations about approval and agreement. And okay, sorry, Councillor Stewart, I didn't see your hand.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask you, obviously this had been done some time ago, the initial consultation, and you know, during the COVID pandemic, there was a lot more emphasis on outdoor exercise, and people were going in a lot more sort of walks and using the core path network more than before. So I'm just wondering, in light of that, do you think if the consultation had to be done today, the rate response might be different? Because I am a bit reluctant to remove it, given the length of time since the consultation. I'm just a bit concerned that, you know, there's been a lot of things happen that might influence the behaviour of potential core path users. So I'm just looking for you know, assurances that that's being taken into consideration, because there has been significant time passed.
Yes, thank you. Yes, if we ran this consultation now from scratch, there may well be greater interest. As you say, there's a lot of people started walking and have continued to do so since the lockdowns. But in those two occasions, I don't know if that would make that much of a difference. The first one, say, for example, at Killacan, the red section on there, the northern and western part is still usable, still accessible. People could still use that, whether it was a core path or not. The bit that means that this is not suitable as a core path is on that southern section where there is no bridge and is not usable at all. So it really is not making a huge difference there. You know, the red, sort of 3/4 of that red route that we're looking at removing is still accessible. And secondly, the one at Glenbrittle, again, that route can still be used. It's still part of the wider access network. It's still a forest road that people could use. It's just that we would not be designating it as a core path. So these routes are not being removed from public use at all, but just not having this designation placed upon them.
Okay, Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Philip. I mean, members, colleagues, we had a fairly big discussion on this at one of our ward business meetings when Philip came along and explained the whole situation to us, and I think we were all of us that were there were unanimous that this would not really significantly affect the use of these particular areas. So I'm quite happy to second your proposal to go for the recommendations.
Okay, members, are we all happy? Councillor Stewart, are you happy? Okay, thank you very much. Phil, thank you very much. So members are asked to approve the Skye and Raasay area of the modified West Highland and Islands amended code path plan to submit it to Scottish ministers, and agree that the changes being minor and raised no previous public comment do not require further public consultation. So we approve and agree, Phil, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, members. Goodbye.
Okay, moving on to item 13, because I've indicated that item 12 will be coming to a future committee. This is about the Scottish Government play funding allocation, and I think we've got John Mackay with us. Again, John, we've discussed this at great length previously. We've made agreements. It's really about homologation of funding for Dunvegan and homologation for funding for Ardevasa. I don't know if you want to give us a very, very brief summary, or are you happy for us just to agree the recommendations? But since you're here, you better say something.
Good afternoon, Chair and members, and thank you for allowing me to present the paper. And it is following consultation with members at an area business meeting. Members agreed to award the capital funding for the two play parks. The commitment was given as a matter of urgency to enable the groups for time-limited match funding, and demonstrates the work members and officers do, the community engagement and partnership working, which is not only important for refurbishing the play parks, for the future ongoing care and maintenance of them as well. And I would just ask the members of the committee to homologate the funding of these projects, and happy to take any questions, Chair.
Members, are there any questions, given that we have discussed this previously, or are we happy to agree the homologation of funding to the project identified for Dunvegan Community Path, and agree the homologation of funding for the project identified for Ardevasa? Are we happy to do that, members?
Agreed.
Okay, John, you're off the hook and you can go and get your lunch.
Thank you very much, members and Chair. Okay, right, bye.
Okay, members, we're moving on to item 14. Do you want to take a 5-minute break? Yeah, okay. Sorry about Marianne. So we're now, it's now 10 to 1. Give everyone a comfort break if we're back for 1 o'clock. Okay, welcome back, members. We're now moving on to the last agenda item of the day, which is the Community Regeneration Fund Assessment of Applications. Marianne, do you want to give just sort of a brief introduction about what actually this funding means, because it isn't contained in the paper, and then we'll start looking at the applications. As we agreed at the start of the meeting, Councillor Monroe has a declaration of interest in the Skye Connect application, so we will take that one first. So when we come to that, Councillor Monroe will leave the meeting, and Willie McKinnon will invite him back in once we've addressed that request. How does that sound?
Yeah,
okay,
perfect.
so we'll go over to you first, Marianne, just to give a brief summary, and then we'll start going through the applications.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Thank you for your time today to consider the Community Regeneration Funding, or CRF, application submitted in your area. Ahead of today's meeting, members will have received the application forms and a red, amber, green or RAG summary spreadsheet highlighting the outcomes of the technical assessments undertaken by the CRF team. It is important to note that the RAG assessment is undertaken on information that has been provided to us by the applicants during the application process, and where a project has been awarded red or amber against any criteria, it does not reflect an eligibility issue, but it does flag up that there are some technical concerns or that only brief information was provided within the application. So if members wish to approve projects with red or amber ratings, we would just seek to address these concerns by applying technical conditions to any offer of an award made. Now, since the committee papers were published, there have been a number of RAG rating and grant request amount changes. So I can update members as we go through each application. But in the meantime, and just to summarise, today members are asked to consider 11 applications to CRF with a total grant request amount of £403,921.37. And in Skye and Raasay, the total available funding for this round is £437,500.67. So members are asked today to decide whether to approve, defer or reject applications under consideration. In the case of approvals, we ask also members to agree the grant award amount and any conditions of funding they wish to attach over and above the technical conditions that we will attach arising from the technical assessments. Now, our members, I'll just say a couple of things about the kind of change from EOI stage to application stage. As members will remember, this round of CRF was heavily oversubscribed at expression of interest stage, with a total grant request amount which was more than twice the amount of funding available at the time. After consideration of the EOIs, members invited 14 projects to application, and out of the 14 projects invited, 2 organisations actually withdrew their application, and 1 project was successful in securing an award from the Community-Led Local Development Fund, which also forms part of CRF. And therefore this application was removed from the area ask. Now, consequently, this actually means that the CRF funds available for members to allocate today are now slightly undersubscribed. As part of the committee report, members will also see they are asked to agree the recommendation to ring fence any remaining balance within this allocation to deliver area priorities through identified through an area base plan. In the case of Skye, obviously the SARF plan would be appropriate, subject to full applications being brought to a future committee for consideration. Unless there are any questions at this point, I can move on to introducing each application, starting with Skye Connect.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. So if Councillor Munro could leave the meeting while we look at that application. And just to reinforce, Marianne, what you've said round about any unallocated funds that we now have, absolutely, we've got several projects that are waiting in the wings from community groups. So we will be discussing these with you at a future date.
Thank you.
Okay, so Skye Connect, so over to you then, Marianne.
Okay, so Skye Connect, so members will have seen the application forms. The applicant with this project is essentially aiming to take forward and deliver on sustainable and affordable transport and infrastructure improvements and initiatives that have been identified as priorities in area base plans and feasibility studies developed across Skye and Raasay. You will see project robustness and match funding ratings are graded amber. Now, for a couple of reasons. As it stands, the application is presented as a 2-year project, and as you know, on this round of CRF, we are unable to fund project costs beyond March 25. And the match funding decision, although agreed in principle, we would still need to see a final and official confirmation. So this is why it's graded amber as well. So if this application is successful in securing CRF support, I think we would suggest an administrative change to ring fence essentially the match funding for the purpose of funding the ineligible costs associated with year 2. But today members are asked to consider a grant request from CRF of £57,080. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. I mean, I think we all appreciate the importance of this project. I'm happy to go round, members. I mean, I'm happy just to say that I supported and I would like it approved. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit concerned with this one. Actually, I think, you know, in principle, it's a good idea to be progressing these things. But, you know, I think we've done all of these reports. We've got the master plan, and, you know, I'm a bit reluctant to fund this project because I think, you know, if we have money to take this thing forward, you know, we've seen the good work that Alan and his team's done at the store, and, you know, that's something that's been done internal to the council in consultation with members. So, you know, I think while there definitely is scope to take something like this forward, I think perhaps we should be looking and seeing if it's something that, you know, we can do in-house and perhaps provide a bit more value for money for this fund. You know, I think like we do definitely need to action a lot of these points, but I'm not sure that this is the correct forum to see it done. You know, I think reading this, I think we're going to get another report saying you know, do more stuff when we've already had a lot of these reports done. There has been a lot of good work. You know, I think we'd be best putting our money into actually envisaging some of this, and I think to provide value for money, it'd be best to be done through the council itself. So I'm not overly keen on supporting this application, to be honest.
Okay, now I think there's a very good reason why it's gone to Skye Connect, because the council did look at pursuing this. But Marianne, are you able to confirm as remember there was a reason why we couldn't do it in-house as efficiently or with the same scope?
From what I know, I think it was felt it possibly would sit better with Skye Connect, but I know that it is very much a partnership between Skye Connect and the Highland Council, and they have been in touch with the relevant teams from the Highland Council to develop the job description, and it's expected the officer taking the lead on the project will very much report to both bodies and other key organisations. So my understanding is, although the lead applicant for a funding point of view is Skye Connect, it is going to be a project delivered in partnership with both organisations.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to Drew, Willie McKinnon's online. Willie, was there something about employment beyond 18 months or something? You know, so to ensure that the project does cover the 2 years, there was an issue around that. Was not correct?
Yeah, it was obviously looked at by that travel team who have been working in partnership with Skye Connect on this. And the issue with it coming in-house would have been the restriction on the length of time that the person could be employed before it created permanency rights for money that we couldn't guarantee beyond the 2 years. So at that point, I think it was felt it was best to be through Skye Connect, who were originally part of the group that looked at the 2 master plans, and they would take that forward so to get 2 years out of it. And the post is very much about taking forward those plans that have already been done, so that the 2 plans that are referred to have a list of projects there, and the key element of this role will be actually trying to take those projects forward. It's not about creating another report. They'll be very much involved within the active travel team. My understanding is that they'll be included in their kind of weekly team meetings, so very much a partnership.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, we did discuss this previously, Councillor Stewart. So has that answered your concerns?
I understand it from Like from that point of view, and I mean, you know, obviously I'm hearing from yourself, and I think other members that it's something that you are minded to support. But I mean, like reading some of this stuff, I think as well that the application isn't the strongest. You know, when it's asking about providing value for money, it says goes into detail about how the tourism economy is worth you know, so much to Skye, and you know it makes a tremendous leap that if this project does not succeed, then that tourism money won't come anymore. I think that's just a bit of a nonsense, to be perfectly honest. But I'm not going to move an amendment or anything with this. If you know there's a general consensus that this project should go ahead, then I am reluctantly happy to agree with that consensus.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Stewart. And I think these are the feedback points that Marianne will be taking back to the applicant. Councillor Miller.
Thanks. Well, we've been disappointed really with Councillor Stewart there, because we discussed this previously, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you wasn't able to attend the ward meetings at the time, but you know, these plans, as Willie I think I said, they've been in place, but nobody's been actually doing anything with them, and that was one of the reasons why we had to try and advance these plans so that things would happen. And you know, I'm perhaps not a fan of Skye Connect. I don't know really all the things that they do, but the problem is that they were able to have the capacity to take this on, and it's already been explained by Willie, and you had referenced yourself, Chairman, that about the in-house, doing it in-house. So the reason I've supported this, once we managed to speak to Skye Connect and they were willing to create the capacity to do this, we want to see these plans actually done. I mean, there's no point in having plans and they're sitting on a shelf with nobody actually doing anything about them. So this is our best option, and I think we should approve it, but I would be very keen as well, once this person is in post, that we do get annual regular reports as to the work that's been carried out, because I don't want to be sitting here in 2 years' time or whatever, and all we have is a box or a cabinet full of reports. We need to see action on the ground with this, with the money that we're spending here, and you know, we want to see the lives improved for the local people in Skye as well as the visitors. So yeah, we couldn't do it ourselves, so let's get on and approve this grant and get some work started and get these plans taken to fruition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. Okay, given what Councillor Miller and Councillor Stewart have indicated, Marianne, the consensus seems to be to approve, but going back to the applicant and pointing out the concerns that members raised.
Thank you.
Okay, Willie, do you want to invite Councillor Monroe back in?
I've just sent him a message, so hopefully he'll just join again.
Okay, are you back with us, Callum? Okay, members, let's move on to reference number 2135, Skye and Raasay Mental Health Association. Marianne.
Thank you. Yes, so this project, there are a few different strands to this project. Again, you'll have seen the application form. Essentially, it's looking at increasing support and providing new ways to access support across the island to people suffering with mental health issues. Now, I have received an updated budget from the applicant. You will see on the RAG ratings that project robustness and match funding at the time of issuing the papers were graded amber. They have now been updated to green. So I've had contact with the applicant, and they have been able to identify some savings in their capital costs relating to the upcycling workshop that they're looking to build. Additionally, the outstanding match funding decision that they were expecting in January has been postponed due to a lack of available funding. And so as not to delay the project start, the applicants have increased their own financial contribution to the project costs and are asking CRF to bridge the funding gap. So overall, it does mean the grant request is actually reduced from the original ask, and the grant as it stands just now, the request is £58,476.
Okay, I think given the focus we've got on supporting mental health and supporting some of our vulnerable communities and those inner communities, I'm happy to recommend approval. Members, is anyone otherwise minded?
Agreed.
Okay, Marianne. So yeah, we're minded to approve, and it's good to see the ambers turn to green.
Thank you. Moving on to CRF 2152 from Uig Community Hall. So a project relating to capital costs for improving accessibility of the hall and the hall toilets. The applicant has now secured at least verbal planning permission, and they are just awaiting the formal decision notice. They have also now received building warrant, and the discussions around match funding are looking positive. Although the match funder, I think, has indicated that they would want to find out the outcome of this CRF application before they can formally commit funding to the project. So this has therefore changed the RAG rating for project robustness to amber instead of red. Additionally, the applicant have also increased the grant request amount from CRF following an application for match funding which was unsuccessful. So the grant request amount is today £77,500, which represents about 57% of the total project costs.
I mean, I know we did have concerns about the amber and the reds, and it's good to hear that progress has been made there. And I think while the match funder wants confirmation from us, we're probably wanting a confirmation from the match funder, so it's a catch-22. My own opinion is that I'm minded to approve the original request as opposed to the increased request. I don't know what other members think.
It's one of those. Sorry.
Callum, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, it's one of those situations that I'm familiar with it in our own community here, where you get first funding, second funding, and you're just that little bit short, and then nothing happens. That's a danger. I certainly think there should be a condition attached to this that will dependent upon match funding coming in to go ahead. Marianne, do we have room for an extra 10?
As things stand at the moment, should members wish to approve all the applications under consideration just now, yes, you would. There is no resource implication there, so you would be able to approve the extra £10,000.
Or do we stick with the original and say, we'd appreciate some demonstration of efforts to bridge that gap yourselves in a certain time frame? What do you think, John?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's appropriate. And given that we did discuss earlier, my other projects that had been earmarked possibly for some funding, and one of them being right in Uig. So that would be my consideration. Councillor Miller?
Yeah, I wasn't going to bother now. I think what Callum and yourself have said, I'm happy to. I don't think we should just hand over the 10,000. I think what Callum has come in with there is they should be trying to make the efforts to bridge the gap and see what happens. I mean, it's a considerable amount of money that we're giving, and if you look at there just seems to be. I know the hall needs upgraded. There's no doubt about that, but maybe they can make savings somewhere along the line as well. I mean, you know, if you're looking at some of the you know, one, two, three different types of toilets, for example, which would be expensive for a start. So I think they should be asked to have a look to see if they can bridge the gap themselves. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Stewart.
No, I absolutely agree. I think looking at the costings, it is very, very high actually. So no, I agree with the other members. I think that's a sensible approach.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Stewart. Okay, Marianne, so we agree to approve the initial request of 67,500.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to CRF 2165 from Slate Community Trust. So a project to upgrade and redesign the local play area that members will be familiar with. Just as a reminder, at EOI stage, the grant request was significantly lower. At the time, they were sitting at about £10,000. Now that was solely because the applicant hadn't fully explored at the time what the costs would be to upgrade the play park. Since then, they have been in contact with the council, the amenities team from the Highland Council, and they've worked closely with them to come up with a design that would fit the play park. But of course, it has come with a sharp increase in costs, so and therefore a much higher grant request from CRF. Now you will see project robustness is graded red. Now that is solely to reflect that there are some significant outstanding requirements to be met before the project can start from a funding point of view anyway. The project costs are mostly indicative at the moment. We would need to see further quotes. And there's also a bit of work to be done on clarity, I suppose, on long-term maintenance responsibilities and ownership of the play park. And it will likely require some form of written agreement, I suppose, between the applicant and the Highland Council. So these kind of outstanding requirements would just need to be added in as conditions to any grant offer made from CRF. So as it stands, the CRF grant request for members today is £55,719.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. And given that we have already discussed the Scottish Government play funding allocation, with some of it going to this particular project, I think it would be foolish not to support it, but absolutely with the conditions that you've mentioned, because they do need to get their act together really and tighten up on all these requests that you've made. Councillor Stewart.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit concerned about the robustness of the project, given the costings that Marianne's raised. I think we've seen it go up quite a bit, and I am concerned that we have already allocated money to this project. And I'm concerned that until we've got a final cost figure, sometimes these things of cost can just continue to spiral on them. So I'm a bit concerned about that, especially given, as Marianne said, the original grant request was significantly lower, but we look at what's been put in to date, and there's a budget line for £6,400 for sort of management and supervision costs for this project, which, given what the original grant request was, I think that's bordering on excessive when the UI came in just around the 10,000 mark for the whole project. So that's my comments on it. And I am reluctant to fund that amount of sort of management costs with a project like this, considering that we have already allocated money from other funds to this project. I think it's something that we've seen other communities on Skye, they go out and they shake a bucket to get money for the play park, and I'm very supportive of using our community regeneration fund for this kind of projects. But I do think when there is that element of money being taken off of the actual infrastructure investment, that we should be more mindful of that as well.
Okay, thanks, Rory. Yeah, I mean, I think very clearly there's a lot of naivety around the first assessment that was made of costings, and clearly our officers have been supporting them and putting a more definitive and a more accurate figure around what this play park's going to cost. And I suppose it is quite worrying that they didn't look at the ones in Killarney and the one in Dunvegan and the one in Portree to get an idea of what the costs are, because say play parks do not come cheap. So given that and given what you members are saying, given what Marianne has said about there's need for additional information, are we suggesting then that we should defer this one? Is that what members are thinking? Or should we approve? Councillor Stewart's going for defer. Councillor Miller and Councillor Monroe?
I would approve with all these conditions, certainly. And I think I understand completely what Rudy's saying. I just think that, even the council has got to do things and be cost neutral. We have to charge if we're going to do something. And I know how tight things are for community trusts. We only see our applications from Broadford and Portree, the costs. So it is difficult. There is costs involved in bringing these projects to a conclusion. So if we defer, it might not happen. But I think there's got to be very strict conditions and make sure they're all met. That's my take.
Okay, Drew?
Yeah, and yes, I suppose on the conditions, Marianne, if you impose these conditions, do we then decide whether we are happy with those conditions, or is that an officer decision? Because I think it would be useful. I mean, we've agreed this morning to give them or homologate. What did we do this morning? To agree the money towards this, towards the play park. So I think it would be maybe a wee bit rash to defer this, Rudy. I don't know. I just wondered about the conditions. Will we get a sight of these conditions before anything happens? I think is probably my question, because I think every area needs play parks, and deferring it will not do any good to the children who live there or to the visitors who possibly might use it. So if we accept that it was naivety and in the initial bid, which £10,000, as we know, would hardly pay for a swing, never mind a full play park. So maybe there was naivety, but I think if we can get some reassurance that this project will be very closely monitored and the conditions that are set we'll have a look at maybe before it goes ahead, then yeah, I think we should maybe tentatively approve it today.
Okay, so Marianne, I mean the decision obviously deferred would come back to members. So I think what we're hearing, Marianne, I'm minded to support Councillor Monroe and Councillor Miller, but we need to make sure that the conditions are very clear and they're shared with all members here so that we understand and the group understand what our expectations are of them.
Yes, that's fine. We can do that. We would basically set pre-start conditions essentially. So no funding would be released until the pre-start conditions were met. So it's very much on paper, and for projects like this, we would look at obviously all the procurement requirements being met. So having seen the quotes, comparative quotes if possible, and that this kind of written agreement between the Highland Council. So no, the project wouldn't start without the pre-start conditions being met. So I'll make a note to add them in.
Okay, thank you.
CRF 2185 from Carbos Pier Limited. So members will remember this project at EOI stage was looking to install 4 breakwater pontoons to provide berthing facilities in the area. The feedback following EOI was to reduce the scope of the project and therefore the grant request amount from CRF. And the applicant has done just that and addressed members' comments. So this application in front of you today focuses on delivering only 2 of the pontoons, and this has reduced the grant request amount. The project itself can start once funding is secured. There is one element of match funding still pending, and this is reflected in the amber grading seen in the technical assessment. All other requirements are in place, and the CRF grant request for members to consider today is £29,813.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a great project. We've seen the work starting, staff in harbour, and these kind of facilities are really transformational for communities, especially ones like coastal communities. So no, I'm really happy to support this application. I think given the scaled back nature of it and taking that feedback from the EY phase, I'm very happy to support this.
Okay, and I'm like-minded, given that this group have been, I think this is their third time that they've come to us, and they've clearly developed the project. You know, they've cut it down to size, and we do know the importance of having pontoons for both local vessels and the growing tourist yacht trade. So, members, are we happy to approve? Okay, yeah, happy to approve, Marianne.
Perfect, thank you. CRF 2227 from Skydance. So members will be familiar with this one. The application is for continuation of a project which was successful in securing CRF support last year. And essentially, the applicant is looking to build on the success of the project so far and requesting further support from CRF for dance classes across several communities on Skye for another year. Now you will see the legacy grading has been rated amber, and this reflects the fact that the applicant has stated in their application that they expect to always be relying on financial support from various funding and charitable sources to provide their core services. Other than that, there are no technical concerns that arose during the assessment. So the CRF grant request in front of members today is £23,052.37.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. I mean, I think we all appreciate the importance of this project and the benefits it's brought to youngsters across the island. But I think it is important that we feed back, should we agree to approve, that this can't be an annual occurrence. That they need to be looking at the sustainability and looking at their business plan to make this sustainable going forward from now. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I think this is another very good project, and we have seen it before, but we've also seen some of the good work and results that it's delivered. I think while I take on board your comments, Chair, about things like recurring and coming back to us, and it is good to see that level of inbuilt financial independence with these projects. I think for some things you've got to look at the benefit that it brings, and what functions that it takes off, because we know that after school and evening activities and stuff do provide real value to a community, and I think projects like this are really worth supporting. But I do agree with the Chair's comments that it is good to see a continual sort of finance generating element of that, but I do think it's worth noting that it's not always possible, and that doesn't necessarily mean that a good project shouldn't be continually funded.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Miller.
I'm loath to agree with Councillor Stewart, but I think I'll have to on this one. I think that sorry, it's only a joke, really. Yeah, I think the problem these sort of operations have, they're never going to be sustainable, because the people that go to these are, well, we all know the situation in the world today, and the Skye in particular. This is a huge advantage for young children. It boosts their confidence. It boosts their skills. I mean, I was a bit of a dancer myself in my day, so I know all about these things, always liked their foot. But I think that the showcases that this organisation has put on have been appreciated by people who, I didn't go to the showcases, but I know people that did, and the participation of these young children, young people, I should say, has been fantastic. It's boosted their confidence, good for their mental health, and if they have to come back year after year looking for assistance, I think these are the sort of things that we need to support, because there's not a lot else for a lot of young people in this particular part of the world to do. And if they can make access of the school buildings, etc., and just boost their own self-confidence and their skills, I think we need to support these. So I won't disagree with you completely, Chairman, but I think that we have to look at it on a year-to-year basis, and if we can support them, we should.
Okay, so what you're hearing, Marianne, we're minded to approve, but maybe asking the group to be considering, what they're doing and how they could be maybe self-sustaining and looking at other funding opportunities as well.
Okay, thank you. CRF 2229 from Broadford and Strath Community Company. So this is the first of 2 applications from Broadford and Strath. Members will be familiar with the organisation and their work in supporting the communities of Broadford and Strath at the Growers Hub in Broadford. Part of this project is to expand the support and services to the core of the community, also via a new outreach programme. The legacy grading is rated amber, and this is very much for the same reason as the Skydance application, I suppose, in the sense that the applicant have noted that the project in itself is not self-sustainable, as although there is some income raised via the activity, it isn't sufficient to fund the full project costs. But there are plans in place to access other sources of funding in order to secure continuation of the programme of activities planned. Other than that, there are no other concerns from the technical assessments, and the CRF grant request is £24,776.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. Yeah, I think it's worth noting that this is generation, it's across all ages. We know from previous applications and from our general involvement with Broadford and Strath community that they are an active group who are doing an awful lot in their community. So I would be strongly supporting this. And again, maybe we do need to be looking and having a discussion with them or mentioning the need for that sustainability. Councillor Miller?
Sustainability is your stance today. So yeah, I would agree. I mean, we know the benefits of this sort of thing, and the Portree collective is a good example as well, as where the huge benefit to people of all ages. So I would have no problem in supporting this, and as well, I think that yes, they have to look at perhaps other sources of funding, as we mentioned with the Skydance. But I think again, it's a sort of project that the advantages to the people who are involved in that are, you can't measure it really in money terms. You have to sort of say, look, if this was to stop, the effect on people who are getting the benefits at the moment could be, how would they be met? So I think we really need to have some flexibility in the sustainability section as well, because it is a good project and it's helping a lot of people. So yeah, support it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart.
Well, I didn't think I'd be agreeing with Councillor Miller today, but I have to say, no, he's made that point very well, and I do think it comes back to this point of it's about supporting the organisations that support our communities, and I think that's something that this project demonstrates. We've done work with Broadford and Strath before, and they do have a track record of delivering high quality outcomes. So I've got no reservations with supporting this application.
Okay, thank you, members. So yeah, so we're minded to approve, Marianne, and maybe put it a small s, sustainability, when you're talking to them, that because they have got income generation potential there, and so I'm not going to avoid the word sustainable, but just maybe look into that in the future. Okay, moving on.
CRF 2246 from Skye and Raasay Citizens Advice Bureau. So project costs relate to staff costs for employing an outreach advisor.
Hey, Marianne, before you progress, I know I've been late here. I mean, I am on the board for CAB, so I am going to pull out of this one, if you don't mind.
Sure. Okay.
Sorry, Marianne.
That's That's okay.
If I can come in here, the chair has declared interest in this item, and he's obviously left the meeting. So for this item, members, I need to ask members to appoint an interim chair for this item. So I'll seek nominations for an interim chair, please.
Councillor Monroe could chair this item, and we should maybe accept that the chairman's forgetfulness is down to his age, probably.
Just to confirm, Alistair, I think Callum has already been identified and approved as the vice chair in the absence of the chair at a previous area committee. He was to take the civic lead, I think was what it was, but that civic lead also included the role of vice chair.
Okay,
thanks for clarifying that, Willie. I wasn't sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So, Marianne, continue, please, where you were with the CAB, the CAB.
So yes, so CRF 2246 Skye and Raasay Citizens Advice Bureau. Project costs relate to staff costs for employing an outreach advisor and offer home visits to the more remote and rural areas of Skye and Raasay, providing support with all manner of inquiries relating to debt. This is very much a pilot project that has been developed in answer to a need and increased level of demand for access to services, especially for people who may struggle to access the CAB office in Portree. Match funding is graded amber on the technical assessment, as there is a small amount of match funding to be secured before the project can start. Legacy is also graded amber, as there is some uncertainty on the continuity of the project. However, the applicant does aim to seek further funding from external sources if this pilot project is successful. There are no other technical concerns, and the grant request from CRF today for members to consider is £18,177.
Thanks, Marianne. Well, we all know the work that our local CAB does, and it's a very, very worthwhile group. So I would be minded. The only thing, Marianne, was if we don't get much funding, are we able to adjust the pilot project, or would the funding be withheld? What's the situation?
That's very much a discussion we'd have to have with the applicant. I think they have, from discussions I've had with them, I think they might have other sources of funding they might be able to access to bridge the gap. Yeah. If not, we would certainly suggest that they look at maybe either phasing the project or looking at it in a slightly different way, so that it can be fully funded, but maybe with a smaller outcome.
Thanks, Marianne. Well, I'm minded to support this, members. What do you think? Drew and Rudy, excellent thumbs up. So that's approved, Marianne.
Thank you.
Willie, can you call Chairman in back in again out of his?
Yeah, just
long
send a
enough
message.
in Coventry now.
I'll stand down.
A short rise to fame, Callum, but feet in the ground again. Coventry's not that bad a place anyway, it seems.
No, it's all right. Well used to it.
Hopefully he's muted himself for the rest of the day now.
Apologies for that oversight. And Councillor Miller suggested it was my age, but given it was for the people, but then I thought I would follow the activity of my colleague Councillor Monroe. So apologies for that. And somebody can update me at a later date whether it was approved or otherwise. Okay, moving on, Marianne.
Thank you. So the next one is CRF 2248 from Portree Community Centre Association. So they are looking to recruit 2 new part-time posts, a caretaker and a bookings coordinator. Originally, I believe it was one role, but they are now proposing to actually split it into 2 part-time roles to have a bit more flexibility. And both post holders are expected to work alongside the existing voluntary committee to promote the venue and increase income to the hall. There are no real technical concerns with this application, and the grant request is £11,328.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. I mean, you've answered my question about creating 2 posts instead of 1, and I suppose I mean, they are doing an awful lot of work, the voluntary group, and if you're going to have a place that's busy and active, and if somebody's not available, I can now see the reasoning for maybe having a split post. So I'm happy to approve, and I think are other members the same?
Yeah, happy to approve. I think that they're probably going to benefit now with having the local post office in there, which will obviously give them a bit of income as well. So that should help, and also it maybe creates more duties for the two posts if they're successful to fill them. So yeah, fully support it.
Okay, we approve that one, Marianne.
Thank you. CRF 2267 from Dunvegan Community Trust. So this is another play park project seeking funding for the redevelopment of the Lochside play area into a community-owned play park. As members will remember, the feedback to the applicant following EOI stage was a recommendation to seek further match funding and reduce the ask from CRF. The application in front of you today is very much in line with the members' feedback, and the ask from CRF has been reduced in half from the original request. You will see on the technical check that project robustness and match funding have been graded red. So project robustness against it, just to reflect very much like the Slate project, just a number of requirements that need to be met. And there is also, with this project, a significant amount of match funding to be secured. The applicant is actively fundraising to bridge the gap in funding, and they have very strong support from their community. Well, you'll know also from the update earlier that there's an asset transfer, possibly looking at taking the play park into community ownership. And I know that there are ongoing discussions with the relevant council departments to move the project forward. As it stands, the request today from CRF is £37,500.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. And I think, as we also recognise with our Devasa, we did homologate funding from the Scottish Government Play funding allocation. So I think we have to do the same with Dunvegan as we did with our Devasa, and that's be very clear about the conditions. And, you know, we need clarification round about the match funding and the other areas that you've just outlined. Okay, with that in mind, members, are we happy to approve? Okay, yeah, okay, Marianne, happy to approve, and we move on to the final one.
Thank you. Yes, so the final application, reference 2277 from Broadford and Strath Community Company. And it is a request for CRF to essentially match fund the costs of hiring a consultancy firm to carry out a bit of feasibility work on improvement of the paths network in the Broadford and Strath area. The work will include community consultation, surveys, mapping, and it will allow to produce a final report to set out priorities. And the aim is to use for the applicant to then use this report and take it forward for future funding bids for the capital element for path construction and maintenance. The applicant have secured match funding from Path for All, meaning that the CRF grant request today is £10,500.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. Well, I know from attending community council meeting and engaging with a community company, just how many paths there are around the area and the efforts they are making to maintain them and keep them in good condition, and also how much they're used, because it's very rarely that you don't see somebody on the network of paths round about Broadford, and given the rags all green, and given the plans to move forward. I'm happy to approve. Members, any other comments?
No, agreed.
Happy to approve. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Marianne, that's approved as well. So, is there anything you want to? Do you want to finalise anything or summarise where we are, Marianne?
Yes, I'll just summarise. So I can confirm that members today have approved 11 applications for CRF with a total grant amount awarded of £393,921.37. It does leave a balance of £43,579.30. So if I can maybe please ask if members would confirm whether they agree the recommendations made in the committee report to ring fence this balance for the purpose of funding area priorities. We would obviously this would be subject to full funding applications being brought to area committee for consideration.
Yeah, well, I think all members are happy with that, Marianne. And we do know of some projects that probably urgently need funding. So we'll discuss in our next area business meeting how we can facilitate that, and obviously keep you in the loop and have you involved. Before we go on, can I once again thank yourself and Fiona for all the great work you do round about these applications and the robustness with which you carry out your duties and the fantastic communication you have with us as members. So thank you again for that, and we'll see you next time round.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, members, we're almost there. Item 15 is a summary of the ward discretionary budget allocations that we've made, and they are there for noting. And before you go, I've got one more thing to say. Given that Alan Gunn has been putting pressure on me, just to update members that in terms of the Stord project, that things are moving forward, and there are jobs now advertised, 5 jobs advertised on My Job Scotland: a visitor experience officer, a visitor experience supervisor, a visitor experience assistant, and 2 visitor experience rangers. And if anyone wants to apply, they should look at My Job Scotland, and I would encourage members to make known to members of the public that these jobs are now open. And I think they may now also be on Facebook.
I hope you're not suggesting that some of us should take a career change, are you?
I think I may be the first one to consider that. Okay, members, thank you. It's been a long one, but your input has been greatly valued. I think we've made some positive decisions here today, and can I thank Alistair and Willie and all officers for attending. And before anyone collapses due to lack of food, go and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for thinking about our stomachs. Goodbye.